Hi, I'm Riley and I'm 26 years old. I recently got married to the love of my life, but it wasn't without some drama. Let me explain what happened. I met David when I was doing a part-time job at a firm to complete my internship for my degree. Both of us were interning at the same place, and we often worked on the same projects. That's how we started talking. Soon we began meeting outside of work at cafes and movie theaters. We went on several dates before making our relationship official. David was studying at a college in a different state, but his hometown was the same as mine. He was in town because he had a semester off for his internship and chose to do it in our hometown. I was so glad he made that choice because I got to meet such an amazing man. David and I shared a love for many things, and we bonded over that. When it was time for David to go back to college, we were both heartbroken. I remember him being at my place the night before he left, and we just cried in each other's arms. David didn't want to leave me either. I made him promise to stay in touch every day, and he did. We both promised to take care of our health and to visit each other whenever we have free time. We spent the rest of that night making promises and holding each other close. After David left, we kept all our promises. Whenever one of us had a long break, we would fly to see each other. We talked on the phone for hours every day and kept each other updated on everything. That's how we kept our relationship strong. After a year of dating, we introduced each other to our families. My family welcomed David with open arms and loved how happy he made me. They had no problem considering him a part of the family. However, David's family was harder to win over. David's family was pretty conservative and didn't like the idea of their children dating while they were still in school, but they agreed to meet me anyway. At first, it was a bit awkward, but eventually, David's dad and siblings warmed up to me. The only one who didn't was David's mother, Greta. Greta was cold to me from the moment I arrived until the moment I left that weekend. She found every chance to make rude comments about me, mocking my choice of school and my interests. On my first night there during dinner, Greta even insulted my family's social standing. I was really upset when she said those things about my parents, and the rest of the table was shocked. David stood up for me though. "Mom, you're not allowed to talk to Riley so rudely," he said. Greta brushed it off. "Relax, I'm just stating facts." "Those facts are hurtful and untrue," David replied. "Well, maybe there's some truth to them since she didn't choose the better school. Riley's choices are not yours to judge. You owe her an apology." "Oh, please." "Fine, sorry, whatever." "That's not sincere, Mom. Apologize properly." "Sorry, Riley." "Thank you." David then told his mom, "Treat Riley with respect, or you won't be a part of our lives." After that, dinner continued, but it was still very awkward. I was hurt and upset by how David's mother treated me. She didn't even know me, and yet she was so harsh. I knew I didn't choose the most prestigious school, but that was because I wanted to stay close to home and be with my family. My parents could afford to send me to a better school, but I chose to stay. I loved that David stood up for me, especially against his own mother. It showed me that I would always be his number one, and that made me love him even more. When we were about to leave David's place that evening, his dad, Peter, apologized to me for his wife's behavior. "I'm truly sorry for Greta's behavior, Riley," Peter said. "You don't need to apologize for her, Peter," I replied. "Greta is just overprotective of David, you see." "I understand that feeling. My family is protective too. But does that mean they treated David the same way?" I asked. "Oh no, I'm sorry if I gave that impression. We're just protective of each other. The last thing they wanted was for one of us to get hurt, so they were cautious when someone new came into our lives, but once they saw how happy the person made us, they became more welcoming," Peter explained. "So, did your family welcome David warmly?" I asked. "Absolutely. They embraced him because they could see how happy he made me over the past year." "I'm glad he found a place in your family," Peter said. "Your family is different, and that's okay. I'm pretty good at adjusting to new dynamics." "I'm still sorry Greta hasn't been as welcoming," Peter said. "It's all right. I'm sure she'll come around with time," I reassured him. "I have to say I love your enthusiasm," Peter smiled. "Thank you. I believe she'll change her perspective eventually." "I like your positivity. I truly hope Greta warms up to you," Peter said. That conversation with Peter made me feel more welcome in David's family. I knew it might take a while for Greta to accept me, but I was willing to wait because David was worth it. David also made sure to remind me that his mother's opinions never reflected how he felt about me. I was so grateful for David and glad he had my back, no matter what. As the years passed, David and I both graduated, and he moved back to our hometown. We moved in together and were so happy to finally spend all our time together, now that we weren't in a long-distance relationship. We went on frequent dates, and when we couldn't, we enjoyed long evening walks. We were inseparable. So it was no surprise when during one of our evening walks, David got down on one knee and asked me to marry him. I was overjoyed and said yes through tears of happiness, and so began the next few tiring months of wedding planning. People often say that the months leading up to the wedding are the most stressful and constrain a relationship, but for us, the stress actually brought us closer together. The only obstacle was, as you might guess, David's mother, Greta. Greta insisted on being involved in every detail of the wedding. She needed to know about everything, down to the color of the tablecloths. She would call me every day at 8 a.m. sharp to ask about my plans for the day. I'd tell her the same thing every day, work. Then she'd ask about the wedding plans, and I'd remind her that while the wedding was important, I still needed to work to afford it. Greta would huff and tell me to take the wedding more seriously. At first, her comments annoyed me, but over time I learned to let them slide. I'd just say yes, and she'd make me promise to involve her in everything related to the wedding. I'd roll my eyes and agree but didn't actually involve her. After a while, I started feeling bad for not including Greta, so I talked to David about it. I feel bad for not involving Greta. I know her calls are annoying, but involving her might help my relationship with her, right? I asked David. Honestly, I doubt it, my love, David replied. What do you mean? I asked. She has this need to control everything, to the point where it could actually ruin the occasion, David explained. I see. Maybe we could let her help out with just a small part of the planning, I suggested. I know how you feel. You could let her help with something small, but don't get your hopes up. I'll keep my fingers crossed that she'll appreciate the chance and treat me well, I said. Just remember, David started to say. I've got your back no matter what, David reassured me. Thanks, babe. Let's hope for the best, I replied. I decided to let Greta help me pick out the cake for the wedding. I made it clear that while she could offer suggestions, I wasn't obligated to follow them. Greta agreed and told me not to worry. But when the day came to visit different vendors, Greta completely ignored my wishes. She made a big fuss about everything, from the appearance of the stores to the prices. She purposely criticized everything I liked and tried to haggle with the vendors. I was beyond embarrassed by her behavior, but out of respect for her being my future mother-in-law, I kept quiet. I knew David wouldn't have minded if I spoke up, but I decided to cut the day short instead. I told Greta I had urgent work to attend to, and that we could meet up later to finalize the cake details. I left before she could accuse me of not taking the wedding seriously because I'd had enough of her for the week. When David got home from work, he took one look at me and started laughing. Through his laughter, he asked, "So, how was your day with Mom?" "Oh, you have no idea. She embarrassed me the entire time," I replied. "Really? That's bad," David said, concerned. "Yeah. Bad enough that I think we need new vendors now." "See, I knew involving her was risky," he said, shaking his head. "I was just trying to make things better between us," I admitted. "My love, I'm going to remind you again that my mom's behavior doesn't define our relationship. I love you no matter what." "Thanks, darling. Maybe I won't involve Greta anymore. Sounds like a plan." And so the rest of the months leading up to the wedding went on as before, with Greta continuing to ask to be involved. I kept making excuses to keep her at a distance. Eventually, David stepped in. "Mom, we want to plan our wedding ourselves, without anyone else's input," he told her. "How could you manage such an important day on your own?" she asked, shocked. "Well, I'm not the only one planning the wedding. Riley is involved too," David explained. "She must be the one pushing you to exclude me." "I'm telling you, she's not good for you," Greta insisted. "No, listen. I was the one who suggested not involving you. In fact, Riley was the one who asked me to give you a chance. You need to stop blaming her. You wanted to exclude me." "How could you do this to your own mother?" Greta said, hurt. "Mom, I didn't want to hurt you. We both just wish you'd respect our decisions. You're pushing me away for her sake," she accused. "No, I'm asking for your understanding. Riley and I want to plan our dream wedding together. We really don't need any help. Fine, but I've always wanted the best for you, Greta said, relenting. We know, Mom, but we need your support, not your control, David said gently. I just worry about you, David, she said, softening. We appreciate that, but please, for my sake, respect our wishes, David replied. After that conversation, Greta stopped contacting us as much. I felt so relieved to not have to deal with her. David and I were finally able to fully focus on planning our wedding. When the big day arrived, I was a bundle of nerves and excitement. I was thrilled to finally marry the love of my life, and I desperately hoped everything would go smoothly. The ceremony went off without a hitch, and David and I were legally married. We were over the moon and couldn't wait to celebrate with drinks and dancing at the reception. However, things didn't go as smoothly as I had hoped. The reception started off well, but at some point, Greta had one drink too many. She ended up getting really drunk and caused a massive scene. She grabbed hold of me and loudly declared that she would never accept me as part of her family. I squirmed uncomfortably as I tried to free myself from Greta's strong grip. David, on the other hand, was furious. Mom, let go of Riley, he demanded. Oh, David, I've always known what's best for you. She's not right for you, Greta insisted. I've had enough of your behavior. Leave now, David replied, his voice firm. You won't throw your own mother out of your wedding, Greta protested. I'm dead serious. I won't tolerate any disrespect toward my wife, David declared. Peter, David's father, walked over and asked, What's going on here? Mom came over just to humiliate and insult Riley. I want her to leave. I won't have her treat Riley this way, David explained. What is wrong with you? I'm just being honest, Greta defended herself. Honesty doesn't give you the right to humiliate or insult us. I don't want to be associated with that, David replied sternly. Greta, let go, Peter said firmly. You can't be serious, Greta responded, shocked. Peter calmly said, Enjoy the rest of your evening and congratulations again, before walking away. I was very upset by the scene Greta had caused, but what upset me even more was that Peter couldn't enjoy the day with us. Still, the party carried on, and the day remained memorable for David and me. A couple of weeks later, David and I were buzzing with excitement as we prepared for our honeymoon to Italy. Visiting Italy was on both of our bucket lists, and we wanted our honeymoon to be as romantic as possible. We waited impatiently for the day to travel. Finally, when the day arrived, David and I frantically made sure we had all our passports and luggage together. Just as we were about to leave for the airport, our doorbell rang. We looked at each other in confusion because we didn't know who would come to our place that early in the morning. When we opened the door, we were shocked to see Greta standing there with her bag packed and her passport in hand. David looked at his mother angrily. What are you doing here, Mom? He asked. What do you mean? Quit playing dumb, Greta replied. Oh, I just thought I'd join you on your holiday. This isn't a holiday and you know it. How did you even know about our honeymoon dates? David demanded. You logged into your email on my laptop once and forgot to log out, Greta explained. When was this? College maybe? I can't remember, David said, surprised. You've been keeping tabs on him since college? You're insane, I exclaimed. I'm not insane. A concerned mother looks out for her son. And why on earth would you want to come on our honeymoon? I asked, still in disbelief. I won't rest until I show David you're not good enough, Greta insisted. That's enough. Leave, David said firmly. I'm not leaving, Greta replied stubbornly. David was seething with anger. I held his arm to calm him down. He then looked at me and smirked. What's your plan? I asked. If my mother wants to sabotage us, let's play her own game, David said with a grin. I don't get it. What do you mean? I asked, confused. Remember our cop costumes from last Halloween? David asked. Yeah, why? I replied. Where are they? He asked eagerly. They're in the box on top of the wardrobe, I answered. Perfect, David said, then rushed into the bedroom. I stood awkwardly with Greta in the doorway. She smirked at me, thinking she had won. I heard David rummaging around in the bedroom before finally emerging with our luggage. He asked both of us if we were ready to leave. We nodded and Greta walked with a spring in her step. David was insistent on helping his mother with her bags. While loading Greta's bag into the car, I noticed David slipping something into it. David looked at me and winked. I was confused but couldn't help but feel a rush of excitement. David insisted that I drive the entire way to the airport. David remained on his phone, but that didn't stop Greta from talking about how excited she was to spend quality time with David and how they had never had a mother-son vacation. I felt very uncomfortable, while David just ignored everything his mother was saying. When we made it to the airport, we arrived just in time to check in. While David and my luggage checked in smoothly, Greta's bag began beeping in the machine. The TSA made her empty out her carry-on bag. Inside was a book that looked like it had something hidden in it. Now, just to set the scene, there was a large line of people both behind and beside her, all impatient but also curious. Everyone looked at Greta. The TSA officer pulled out the book, and the title was How to Spice Up Your Life in the Bedroom. Inside the book was a pair of handcuffs. I couldn't stop the snicker that escaped me. I immediately recognized the items. The handcuffs were from our Halloween costumes last year, and the book was a gag gift given to David by his friends at his bachelor party. Greta's face turned bright red from the embarrassment. The TSA agent looked at her with a raised brow, while the people around her began snickering and whispering among themselves. Just then, an announcement came through requesting David and me to board our plane. I looked at David in shock. He told me that he had managed to find a flight that was leaving an hour earlier than our original one, and since it was the same airline, they were happy to accommodate the change in time. I let out a full laugh at how everything had turned out. Greta hurriedly tried to stuff the contents of her bag back in, while David and I rushed to our boarding gate. Greta watched in horror as we boarded the plane. She looked angry and embarrassed. She tried to call David, but he let it go to voicemail. David and I enjoyed our honeymoon. Every so often we would remember Greta's face in the airport and burst out laughing. When we came back, David cut off all contact with Greta. We still kept in touch with Peter and even invited him over for dinner one day to share the story. He burst out laughing too and agreed that Greta deserved it. Greta kept trying to approach us, but we never acknowledged or entertained her. The airport incident became a cherished memory for us, one we will definitely recount to friends and family for years to come. Our home is filled with laughter, love, and inside jokes, with the handcuff incident remaining a hilarious testament to our ability to weather storms together. This incident is a reminder that no matter the circumstances, David and I will always find a way to stand by each other, laugh together, and overcome any obstacles that come our way. Our journey continues, full of love and laughter, tied by an unbreakable bond that will remain strong throughout the years. Thanks for listening.
You're moving out immediately? What prompted this sudden shift? I could barely believe what I was hearing. The living room, usually warm and cozy, felt cold and unfamiliar. Ben, my stepson, stood by the front door with a duffel bag at his feet. His fiancée, Kara, a pretty girl with bright eyes and dark hair, stood a few steps behind him, her arms crossed protectively over her chest. "It's not personal, Loretta," Ben said, shifting uncomfortably. "Kara's family has expectations." I glanced at Kara, who quickly looked away. "Expectations? Ben, after everything we've built together, you want to leave?" Ben's face softened for a moment, but then he hardened his resolve. "They want us to live closer to them. They think it's important for us to build a new life together, away from here." I could hear my husband Keith's footsteps coming down the stairs. "What's going on here?" he asked, eyeing the scene with suspicion. "Ben's moving out," I said, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. Keith's brow furrowed. "Moving out? Why?" Kara stepped forward. "My family is traditional. They believe it's better for a newly engaged couple to start anew, somewhere away from past ties." "Doesn't this feel a bit rushed?" I pressed, looking directly at Ben. "We had no warning," Ben sighed. "I'm sorry it's sudden, but it's what Kara's family wants, and I want to make her happy." My heart ached, but I tried to keep my voice steady. "Don't I play a part in this family anymore?" Keith intervened, his voice calm but stern. "Ben, we understand you want to keep Kara's family happy, but we should have been a part of this decision." "It's already done, Dad," Ben said, his tone final. "We're leaving tonight." A tense silence filled the room. Kara looked at Ben, then at Keith, and finally at me. "We have to go. There's a lot to prepare." I walked closer to Ben, my hands shaky. "I hope you understand how much this hurts us. Ben, we've loved you like our own." Ben's shoulders slumped a bit. "Loretta, it's not about love or family. It's about what's best for the future." Keith's voice grew more firm. Your future or theirs? Our future, Ben insisted, and that's the end of it. Kara tugged at Ben's sleeve, nodding towards the door. He picked up his bag, gave a final nod to his father, and without another word, walked out the door with Kara close behind. The door closed with a soft click, but the echo of their departure felt like a cannon shot in my chest. I looked at Keith, searching for some kind of solace in his eyes. He reached out and squeezed my hand, but there was little comfort there. We stood in the living room, the silence pressing down on us. Finally, Keith spoke, his voice weary. "We'll get through this, Loretta. We always do." I nodded, but the sentiment fell flat. With every step Ben took away from us, it felt like a piece of our family was unraveling. My mind swirled with questions and pain, but no answers came. Only the cold realization that things would never be the same lingered, like an unwanted guest in our home. Dinner was supposed to be a welcoming family tradition. Tonight, though, it was thick with tension. The dining room, freshly painted and refurbished, seemed stark and sterile under the harsh overhead lights. I sat across from Keith, with Ben and Kara to my right. The clatter of silverware was the only thing breaking the uncomfortable silence. Keith cleared his throat and spoke up first, trying to cut through the awkwardness. "So, Kara, when will your family be arriving?" Kara looked up from her plate, her face tight. "They'll be here next week," she said flatly, then shoved a forkful of mashed potatoes into her mouth. I put my fork down, struggling to keep my voice even. "Kara, do your parents really think it's better for Ben to leave his family behind?" Kara hesitated, avoiding my eyes. "My family's old-fashioned. You know that." Ben jumped in, trying to smooth things over. "It's not about leaving you behind, Loretta. It's about starting something new." "Something new," I echoed, bitterness creeping into my tone. "And what about everything we've shared up to now? Is it all just forgotten?" Kara shifted in her seat, clearly uncomfortable. "It's not about forgetting. They just have certain expectations." I glanced sharply at Keith, hoping for his support. Instead, he balled up his napkin and changed the subject. "How's work going for you, Ben?" Ben seized the escape. "Busy, preparing for the wedding and all." I couldn't hold back anymore. "So, our family is just an inconvenience to them?" My voice trembled with the surge of emotion I could no longer contain. "Is that what this is about?" Kara's fork clattered to her plate. "It's not personal, Loretta. My parents just have strong beliefs." Keith sighed, leaning back in his chair. "Maybe we should all just take a step back and cool off." Ben's face tightened in frustration. "We're not trying to hurt you, but we need to do what's best for us." "And apparently that means cutting ties with us," I shot back, feeling the sting of betrayal sharper than ever. Kara pushed her chair back, standing up. "This isn't doing any good. We're just going in circles." Ben followed her lead, standing as well. "We'll talk later. Let's just leave it for now." I watched them leave the dining room, their figures retreating into the hallway and then up the stairs. Only the ticking of the old clock on the mantel filled the silence. Keith rubbed his temples, looking worn out. "Loretta, we can't force them to stay. They have their own lives to live." "Do they, Keith? Or are they just running away from us, from all the memories we've created?" My voice broke again, and I hated how vulnerable it sounded. Keith sighed again, heavier this time. "Let's just give them some space. Maybe that's what they need." I nodded, though it felt hollow. The room, the house, everything seemed emptier without Ben's presence. And Kara's influence was like a dark shadow over our once bright home. As we sat in silence, the remnants of dinner growing cold before us, I couldn't help but feel like this was just the beginning. Something deeper, something more disturbing, was pulling Ben away from us. And I had a sinking feeling that whatever it was, it wouldn't leave any of us unscathed. The attic was dimly lit, dust motes dancing in the slivers of light, filtering in through the small window. It was cluttered with boxes of old clothes, holiday decorations, and childhood keepsakes. I had come up here to distract myself, to find some semblance in the chaos Kara and her family had brought into our lives. I opened the first box, revealing a jumble of toys. An old fire truck, some action figures, Ben's treasures from when he was little. I picked up a battered teddy bear, its fur worn and loved. I ran my fingers over it, remembering the many nights Ben had clutched it tight. "Loretta, are you up there?" Keith called from below. "Yeah, I'm here," I replied, my voice echoing slightly in the confined space. He climbed the ladder, his head poking up through the hatch. "What are you doing?" "Just clearing out some old stuff," I said, not looking at him. He climbed the rest of the way up and sat down next to me. "You don't have to go through this alone." I sighed heavily. "It doesn't feel like anyone's on my side, Keith. Ben left so abruptly, and Kara's family, it's like they've taken him from us." Keith leaned back against a box, looking tired. "Maybe they think it's what's best for him. Do they even care about us? About what this means to our family?" Keith rubbed his temples. "It's complicated, Loretta. They have different values." I tossed the teddy bear back in the box, the frustration boiling over. "Different values, huh? Seems like they just want to erase us from Ben's life." Keith didn't respond, just looked down at his hands. I grabbed another box, rifling through it. Old school papers, drawings, report cards. Every piece was a memory, a piece of Ben's life that we had cherished. "They want me out, don't they?" I said quietly, almost to myself. Keith shifted uncomfortably. "It's not about you, Loretta. It's about Ben's future." I found a photo album at the bottom of the box. Opening it, I flipped through pictures of birthday parties, vacations, Christmas mornings. "Funny, don't seem to see Kara's family in any of these," I said bitterly. "Yet now they're calling the shots." Keith reached out, putting a hand on my shoulder. "They care about Ben, too, in their own way." I shrugged off his hand and stood up. "I'm not sure this is about caring. It feels like control." He sighed deeply. "We can't control everything, Loretta. Sometimes we have to let go." I turned to face him, my hands on my hips. "Let go? Of Ben? After all we've done for him?" Keith stood up, putting a steadying hand on my arm. "Loretta, fighting this won't bring Ben back. It'll just push him further away." I looked around at the scattered boxes, the remnants of a childhood I had helped nurture. Maybe letting go isn't the answer. Maybe it's time to fight for what's ours. Keith shook his head sadly. "I just want peace, Loretta, for all of us." I met his gaze, my resolve hardening. Peace won't come from giving in. If Kara's family thinks they can just take Ben away, they've got another thing coming. Keith's eyes searched mine, trying to find a middle ground. But I saw what they were really after. They wanted compliance, not peace. I turned back to the boxes, pulling out another childhood memory. I'm not going to lose him without a fight. The high-end restaurant buzzed with low chatter and clinking glasses. I slipped in quietly, hoping no one would notice me. Keith and Ben had insisted on meeting Kara's parents alone, but I had a gut feeling something was off. I found a corner seat with a good view of their table and settled in, keeping my eyes on them. Keith was turned slightly away from me, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. Ben sat next to him, stiff and formal. Across from them sat Mr. and Mrs. Myers, looking every bit the picture of conservative respectability. I strained to hear as Keith began speaking. "Yes, raising Ben alone was the hardest thing I've ever done." Mrs. Myers nodded sympathetically, her voice soft but firm. A valiant effort, considering the circumstances. I felt my blood run cold. What circumstances were they talking about? Keith had never raised Ben alone. I had been there every step of the way. "Keith," Mr. Myers said, his tone measured, "losing Ben's mother must have been a devastating blow." Keith glanced at Ben before responding, his voice wavering. "Yes, it was. Janet's death was something we struggled with for a long time." My heart pounded in my chest. Janet wasn't dead. Why were they lying about this? I leaned in closer, trying to make sense of it all. Mrs. Myers continued, her expression stern. "And now you've remarried. It's important for us to understand the family dynamic. We have expectations for Kara and Ben's future, you see." Ben spoke up, his voice placating. "We understand, Mrs. Myers. We want the same things." Keith jumped in, eager to please. "We've done our best to provide a stable and loving environment for Ben." Mr. Myers narrowed his eyes. "And Loretta? How does she fit into all this?" Keith hesitated. "Loretta has been supportive, but it's been challenging." I felt a knot of anger twist in my stomach. Challenging? I had done nothing but support them both. Mrs. Myers nodded. "We expect full commitment to our values and traditions. Any deviation can be problematic." Ben nodded quickly. "We'll make sure everything aligns with your expectations." Keith seemed to relax a bit, comforted by Ben's agreement. "Yes, we'll do whatever it takes to ensure a smooth transition." I couldn't hold back any longer. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. The entire table turned to look at me. Loretta? Keith's face went pale. Whatever it takes, huh? I said, my voice steady but loud enough for the whole table to hear. Lies about Ben's mother? Excluding me from this meeting? Is that how you plan to make things smooth? Mr. and Mrs. Myers looked shocked, but it was Mrs. Myers who recovered first. This is a private family matter, Mrs. Faulkner, I finished for her. Loretta Faulkner. And believe me, I am very much part of this family. Ben looked stricken, but didn't say a word. Keith stood up, trying to calm things down. Loretta, this isn't the time or place. No, Keith, I snapped. This is the perfect time. Enough with the secrets and lies. Tell them the truth about Janet. Keith's shoulders slumped, and he looked at Mr. and Mrs. Myers, then back at me. I can explain. Explain all you want, I said, my voice boiling with anger. But it won't change the fact that this whole thing is built on lies. I turned and walked out of the restaurant, leaving them all in stunned silence. Outside, the night air was crisp, and I took a deep breath, trying to calm down. This was just the beginning. If they wanted a fight, I was more than ready to give it to them. I barely made it to the parking lot before my phone started buzzing. It was Keith. I ignored it, pacing between the cars, my mind racing. The cool night air did little to calm me down. I heard the restaurant door burst open, and there was Keith, with Ben and Kara trailing behind him. Loretta, wait! I stopped and turned to face them, arms crossed. Keith approached cautiously. We need to talk about this. Talk? I said, my voice dripping with anger. You mean explain why you've been lying to everyone? Ben stepped forward, looking desperate. Loretta, please. We can work this out. Work this out? I scoffed. How are we supposed to work out lies? Kara's expression hardened as she stepped up next to Ben. Maybe it's best for everyone if we just separate for a while. I glared at her. Separate? So you can play happy families with your version of the truth? Keith intervened, his tone pleading. Loretta, please, this isn't the time or place for this. Just then, the door of the restaurant swung open again, and a familiar figure appeared. Janet. Her presence was a shockwave. Everyone went silent, eyes widening in disbelief. Well, Janet said, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. If it isn't the hero dad and his loyal son. Kara frowned, confused. Who is this? Oh, just the ghost of Keith's past, Janet replied sardonically, sidling up to Keith. Isn't that right, dear? Keith stepped back, his face pale. Janet, what are you doing here? Just thought I'd drop by and see my lovely family, Janet said, putting an arm around Ben, who looked mortified. Seems like you've been having quite the heart-to-heart. Well, Kara looked at Ben, then at Keith, then at me. What is going on here? Who is she? Janet released Ben and turned to face Kara. I'm Ben's mother, his very alive and kicking mother. Surprised? Kara's face turned a shade paler, and she looked at Keith accusingly. You said she was dead. Keith opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. Janet laughed, a cold, harsh sound that seemed to echo in the still night air. Dead? Oh no, very much alive, thank you. Why would you lie about something like that? Kara shouted at Ben and Keith, her voice filled with betrayal. Ben stammered, unable to meet her eyes. Kara, it's not what you think. We didn't want your parents to judge us. Janet laughed again, more bitterly this time. Judgment? Honey, if you think lying is better than facing judgment, then you don't know anything about family. Kara's eyes filled with tears. I can't believe you lied to me. Keith tried to put a hand on her shoulder, but she pushed him away. Just stay away from me, she said, her voice trembling. She turned and ran to her car, leaving us standing there in the parking lot. Ben looked torn, but he turned to follow Kara. Kara, wait. Janet grabbed his arm, stopping him. Let her go, Ben. Sometimes people need to face the truth. Keith was at a loss, looking between Janet and me. Loretta, Save it, I said, cutting him off. This can't be happening. Janet gave me a knowing look. Oh, it's happening, all right, and it's about time. Keith stood there in silence, knowing the facade he'd built was crumbling before his eyes. The wreckage lay before us, and there was no going back. The smell of fresh coffee filled my sister's kitchen as I sat at the small wooden table, staring blankly ahead. My sister, Marie, bustled around, trying to make me feel at home. Janet was supposed to arrive any minute, and the tension in the air was palpable. Marie set down 2 steaming mugs and sat across from me. You're handling this better than I would, she said softly. Before I could respond, the doorbell rang. Marie rose to answer it, and moments later, Janet walked in. She looked around briefly before fixing her gaze on me. "Loretta," she greeted, her voice firm but not unkind. "Janet," I replied, motioning for her to take a seat. Marie took the hint and left us alone, slipping out the back door to give us privacy. Janet sat down and wrapped her hands around the coffee mug, staring intently at the dark liquid. "So, that was quite the scene at the restaurant," I nodded, taking a sip of my coffee. "You certainly know how to make an entrance." Janet smirked, but her eyes lacked humor. It needed to be done. Keith and Ben have fooled everyone long enough. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of everything unsaid pressing down on us. Finally, Janet spoke, her voice more gentle. "Loretta, I'm sorry you got caught up in this mess." "I appreciate that, Janet. But it's not just me, it's everyone. Kara, her family, even Ben." Janet's eyes darkened. "Especially Ben. He needs to know his actions have consequences." I set down my mug, leaning forward. "It's time they faced the consequences." Janet's gaze was unwavering. "I'll help you make sure of it." The determination in her voice bolstered my own resolve. We weren't just two women wronged, we were two forces ready to set things right. "So, what's the plan?" Janet asked, her tone businesslike. "We need to expose the lies," I said firmly. "Keith's made a mess, and it's time he cleaned it up," Janet nodded. "That means telling Kara's family the full truth. Not just about me, but everything. The gambling, the debts, all of it." I smiled slightly. "Sounds like you have some history to share." Janet stirred her coffee absent-mindedly. "You have no idea. Keith's gambling was the final straw for me. When I left, I thought that chapter was closed, but it sounds like it's come back to haunt him." I glanced out the window, my mind racing with possibilities. "We need to gather evidence, something concrete to show Kara's family who Keith really is," Janet agreed. "I have some old records, bank statements, loan agreements. It should be enough to start with." As we mapped out our plan, I felt a weight lifting. There was a clarity to having a purpose, a direction. For too long, I had been reacting to the chaos. Now I was taking control. Marie peeked through the door, hesitant. "Do you need anything else?" I shook my head, smiling at my sister. "We're good for now, thanks." Marie nodded and retreated, leaving Janet and me to finalize our strategy. The coffee grew cold as we talked, but neither of us noticed. We were driven by more potent fuel, justice and the promise of setting things right. By the time Janet left, I felt a renewed sense of resolve. We had a plan, and I had an ally. The facade Keith had carefully constructed was about to crumble, and I was ready to reveal the truth. No more lies, no more deception. They were going to learn that actions have consequences. And this time, I wouldn't back down. The high-rise office building loomed above me as I stepped into the lobby. Keith's office was on the 15th floor, and the elevator ride up gave me enough time to calm my nerves. I needed to stay composed. The doors slid open with a soft ping, and I walked out, scanning for his office. Getting past the receptionist was easier than I expected. A firm, "I'm here to see Keith Faulkner," and a no-nonsense attitude did the trick. Keith's door was partially open. I knocked briefly before pushing it open. He looked up, startled, papers strewn across his desk. "Loretta, what are you doing here?" His voice was strained, a mix of surprise and irritation. I closed the door behind me, striding to his desk. "We need to talk, Keith. Now." He leaned back, trying to mask his unease. "Can't this wait until I get home?" "No, it can't." I placed a stack of papers on his desk. "These are from Janet. Bank statements, loan agreements, all from your gambling days." Keith's face turned ashen as he flipped through the documents. "Why are you bringing this up now?" "Because it's time the world knows who you really are," I said, my voice steady and unyielding. He stood up, slamming the papers down. "You wouldn't dare. Do you have any idea what this could do to me?" "I know exactly what it will do," I replied coldly, "and that's precisely the point." Keith's eyes narrowed, a look of disdain crossing his face. "You think you're so righteous, don't you? Coming here, threatening me with my past." "This isn't about righteousness, Keith. This is about justice. For me, for Ben, for everyone you've deceived." He took a step closer, his voice low and menacing. "You're playing a dangerous game, Loretta. You won't win." I matched his gaze, unwavering. "I'm not here to win, Keith. I'm here to expose the truth." The room fell silent, the tension thick. Keith finally broke the stare, sinking back into his chair. "What do you want?" "I want you to come clean, to Ben, to Kara, to her family. Tell them everything. Why you lied, the gambling, the debts." He shook his head. You realize this could ruin everything, right? My job, my reputation? Your job and reputation are nothing compared to the damage you've already done, I shot back. And if you don't come clean, I will. Keith's hands clenched the edge of his desk, knuckles white. And what about Ben? Have you thought about what this will do to him? I've thought about nothing else, I replied. This is the only way to break the cycle of lies. It's time he knows the truth. Keith slumped in his chair, defeated. Fine, I'll do it. Today, I insisted. No more delays, no more excuses. He looked up at me, a mixture of resentment and resignation in his eyes. Today. I turned to leave, pausing at the door. And Keith, if you ever try to pull something like this again, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly who you are. Without waiting for a response, I walked out, the weight of the confrontation lingering in the air. The elevator ride down was a blur, my mind racing with the implications of what I had just set in motion. As soon as I stepped out into the sunlight, I felt a sense of resolve harden within me. This was far from over, but we were one step closer to the truth. One step closer to justice for all the lies and betrayal. The facade was crumbling, and Keith was painfully aware of it. And this time, I wouldn't back down. My bustling handmade furniture shop was a far cry from the turmoil that had consumed the past few months. Wood shavings littered the floor, sawdust hung lightly in the air, and the aroma of freshly cut timber was soothing. This place had become my sanctuary, a haven from the chaos Keith had sown. My phone buzzed on the workbench, pulling me from my thoughts. It was a message from Janet. It's done. He told them everything. A mix of relief and apprehension settled in my chest. I had pushed for this, but now that the truth was out, the real consequences had begun to unfold. The bell above the shop door jingled, and I looked up to see Janet walking in. She seemed lighter, as if a burden had been lifted from her shoulders. Well, I asked, setting down my tools. He did it, Janet confirmed. Keith came clean to Kara's family. It was a mess, to put it mildly. I shook my head. That's an understatement. Janet pulled up a stool and sat down. Kara's parents were furious. They had no idea they were being lied to, and they're pulling their support for the wedding. What about Ben? I asked, dreading the answer. He's devastated, Janet said softly, but he needed to hear the truth. It was time. I nodded, knowing she was right. Ben had been caught in the middle of a web of lies, and now he was facing the fallout. And Keith? Janet sighed. He's lost everything. His job, his reputation, Ben. It's all crumbled. A part of me felt pity for Keith, but another part, the part that had been hurt and betrayed, felt justified. Sometimes the hardest battles bring the greatest rewards. Janet gave me a small smile, and sometimes they bring clarity. Ben knows now who his father really is, and he knows who stood by him through it all. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the past months settling between us. Finally, Janet spoke again. So, what now? I looked around my workshop, taking in the fruits of my labor. Now we move forward. I'm expanding the shop, taking on more clients. This place is thriving, and it's only going to get better. Janet nodded, a look of admiration in her eyes. You've built something incredible here, Loretta. And so can you, I said, meeting her gaze. We're stronger than we give ourselves credit for. Just then the doorbell jingled again. This time it was Ben. He looked worn out, shadows under his eyes, but there was a determination there too. Mom, he said, addressing both Janet and me. Can we talk? We nodded, and he joined us, pulling up a stool next to Janet. I'm sorry, he began, his voice choked. For everything. I didn't want to see the truth. Janet put an arm around him. It's okay, Ben. The important thing is you see it now. Ben looked at me, his eyes filled with regret. Loretta, I shouldn't have left like that. I didn't understand how much you cared. I reached out and took his hand. What matters now is that you're here. We can rebuild together. As we sat there, the three of us, an unexpected feeling of hope blossomed. The past had been painful, but it had also revealed strength and resilience. And now, finally, we could move forward. Janet stood up, a smile on her face. Let's go celebrate. Dinner on me. We all laughed, the first genuine laughter in what felt like ages. We left the workshop, stepping out into the sunlight, ready to face whatever came next. Together. Tyler, my water just broke. We need to go to the hospital now. I stood there, clutching my swollen belly, pain surging through me. The life we had planned for months, about to arrive in the next few hours. Tyler stood by the door, suitcase in hand. He glanced at me, his expression a mask of annoyance. "You've got to be kidding me. I have a flight to catch." For a moment, I thought I heard him wrong. "What about our baby? Please, just call an ambulance." He didn't even flinch. "Not my problem. Handle it yourself, Aaron." I watched him walk out the door, the weight of his abandonment crashing over me harder than any contraction. Gathering all the courage I could muster, I fumbled for my phone, dialing 911. As the operator's calm voice guided me through, the panic started to ebb. "Help is on the way, ma'am. Stay calm." Minutes felt like hours, but finally the ambulance's siren wailed in the distance, a sound that brought a sliver of hope. The paramedics arrived, a blur of efficient motions and soothing reassurances. "Hang in there, ma'am. We're getting you to the hospital," said one paramedic, his voice grounded and steady. "Thank you," was all I could whisper, tears mingling with sweat on my face. The ride was a whirlwind, the pain of labor blending with the emotional tumult of Tyler's betrayal. As I lay on the gurney in the hospital corridor, nurses and doctors bustling around, I clung to one thought. I had to be strong for my baby. I had to survive this, with or without Tyler. They wheeled me into the delivery room, bright lights above me. The doctor, a calm middle-aged woman, leaned over. "You're doing great, Aaron. Just stay with us." Each contraction tore through me, but with every push, I imagined the tiny life fighting alongside me. Faces blurred, voices rose and fell in a rhythmic cadence of medical urgency. "Almost there, Aaron. One more big push." With a final guttural cry, the room filled with the first sound of my baby's wail, the sweetest noise I had ever heard. The nurse placed my baby boy on my chest, his small body warm and wriggling. "He's perfect," I whispered, tears streaming down my face, mingling with the sweat and exhaustion. I held him close, feeling a surge of fierce protectiveness that left no room for the pain of Tyler's departure. Rachel arrived not long after, her face a mix of concern and relief. "Oh my God, Aaron, how are you?" I could barely manage a smile. "We're okay, Rachel. He's perfect." Rachel's eyes softened as she looked at the baby. "He is, and so are you." She squeezed my hand, her presence a balm to my raw emotions. "I can't believe he just left," I murmured, my voice trembling. Rachel's grip tightened. "We'll deal with him later. Right now, focus on you and the baby." I nodded, feeling a resolve harden within me. Tyler had walked out at our most critical moment, but I wasn't alone. I had my baby, and I had Rachel. In that hospital room, amidst the sterile walls and beeping monitors, a new chapter of my life began. One where I would rely on my inner strength and the support of true friends to navigate the storm ahead. 3 years earlier, life felt like a dream. Tyler's smile could light up a room, and his laugh made everything feel right. Our romance was quick. From first dates to wedding vows, it was like a storybook come to life. One sunny morning, he leaned down and kissed me softly as I finished making pancakes. "Aaron, I have news," he said, excitement brightening his eyes. "What is it?" I asked, curiosity piqued. "We're going to be parents," he announced, showing the positive pregnancy test. I was ecstatic, tears of joy filling my eyes. We hugged, our hearts beating in sync, full of love and hope. Life was good, at least it seemed that way. My best friend Rachel shared our happiness. She was always around, her laughter a comforting presence. But recently she'd noticed something off about Tyler. One evening she came over, a serious look on her face. "Aaron, can we talk?" "Sure. What's up?" I set down my cup of tea, sensing the gravity in her tone. "Have you noticed anything strange about Tyler lately?" Rachel asked, her eyes searching mine. I frowned. "What do you mean?" "He's been acting different, more distant. I've seen him at odd places," Rachel explained, concern etching her features. Before I could respond, there was a knock on the door. Tyler walked in, a briefcase in hand, flashing his usual charming smile. "Hey, Rachel, everything okay?" She forced a smile. "Yeah, just catching up with Aaron." Days passed and Tyler's behavior grew more erratic. Late nights, secretive phone calls, a pattern that sent chills down my spine. Rachel remained vigilant, her suspicions hardening into certainty. One Sunday afternoon, as we sat on the porch, Rachel finally revealed what she had found. "Aaron, I don't know how to say this, but I've seen Tyler with another woman. Multiple times." Her words hit like a sledgehammer. "That can't be right. We're about to have a baby. Maybe it was work-related?" She shook her head, eyes solemn. It looked far from professional. A wave of doubt and heartbreak washed over me, leaving me struggling for breath. My mind raced to every moment Tyler had seemed off, every time he brushed off my concerns. Trying to hold it together, I asked, "Do you know who she is?" "Her name is Haley," Rachel replied softly, her expression full of sympathy. Stunned, I sat in silence, of the weight of Rachel's words pressing down on me. Tyler's betrayal was a knife in my heart, the blade twisting deeper with every revelation. Before long, every interaction with Tyler felt like walking on glass. His irritability, his secretive nature, it was all becoming too much to bear. Each day I pretended everything was fine, but every night my emotions betrayed me, tears soaking my pillow. Rachel stayed by my side, her support a lifeline. "We'll figure this out, Erin. You deserve better." As my pregnancy progressed, I focused on the life growing inside me, clinging to the promise of a fresh start. The day of Tyler's flight departure, I knew it was time to face the truth, no matter how painful. For now, I stayed quiet, gathering strength. Tyler's deceit would not be the end of my story. It was just the beginning of a fight for truth and for the future my baby and I deserved. Rachel's unwavering support was the anchor keeping me steady, and I knew together we would confront the storm and find the light beyond. Living under the same roof as Tyler became unbearable. Every interaction was tense, each moment fraught with unspoken accusations. He avoided eye contact, and his phone was always on silent, tucked away from prying eyes. One evening, as I sat on the couch, my swollen feet propped up, Tyler walked in, scratching at his neck. "Erin, where's my charger?" he asked, not even glancing in my direction. "Did you check the kitchen?" I replied, my voice betraying the weariness I felt. He grunted in response, stormed off, and returned moments later with the charger. He plugged in his phone, eyes darting nervously to make sure I wasn't watching. I noticed his growing irritability, but kept quiet, focusing on preparing for our baby's arrival. Each day brought its challenges, but Rachel's presence was a constant reassurance. One afternoon, Rachel came over, her eyes blazing with determination. She handed me a folder. "Erin, you need to see this." I opened it to find pictures of Tyler with Haley. They were at a luxury spa, laughing and holding hands. I stared at the photos, the betrayal stinging anew. "I can't believe this is real," I whispered, trying to steady my shaking hands. Rachel's voice was firm. "Erin, you have to confront him. He can't keep doing this to you." That night, I waited for Tyler to come home. He strolled in, whistling as if everything was normal. I cleared my throat and faced him. "Tyler, we need to talk." He sighed dramatically. "What now, Erin?" I held up the photos, my voice trembling with controlled rage. "Who is Haley? Are you cheating on me?" His eyes widened for a split second before narrowing. "Are you serious? You're imagining things, Erin. Get a grip." I shook my head, tears threatening to spill. "You've been distant and secretive. This isn't just my imagination." Tyler stepped closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "You're letting pregnancy hormones mess with your head. Stop reading into things." I felt a surge of anger. "These pictures don't lie, Tyler. Explain them." He snatched the photos from my hand, this crumpling them. "Just drop it, Erin. If you can't handle it, maybe you're the problem." That night, I couldn't sleep. Rachel had warned me, but hearing Tyler's denial, his blatant disregard for our relationship, I knew I couldn't let it slide. The next day, Rachel urged me to consider hiring a private investigator. "You need solid proof if you're going to take action," she said. I hesitated, weighing the options. "I just want to know the truth." As the days passed, Tyler's behavior only worsened. One morning, he snapped at me for no reason, his face twisted in anger. "Why can't you just let things be, Erin?" His words cut deep, but I stood my ground. "Because you owe me the truth, Tyler. We're a family, or at least we were." He scoffed, storming out, leaving me standing there, clutching my growing belly. With every passing day, my resolve hardened. Rachel's investigations revealed more about Haley, confirming my worst fears. Tyler was living a double life, and it was time for the facade to fall. Feeling a familiar tightening in my abdomen, I realized my confrontation with Tyler would have to wait. I wrapped my arms protectively around my belly, readying myself for the next battle. Bringing my baby into this world, surrounded by love and truth, no matter how much it hurt. Tyler came home late that evening, his footsteps heavy against the hardwood floor. I was waiting for him in the living room, my laptop open on the coffee table. "We need to talk," I said, my voice firm. He sighed, rubbing his temples. Here we go again. What is it now, Aaron? My heart pounded, but I forced myself to stay calm. Who is Haley? And don't say I'm imagining things. Rachel saw you two together. Tyler's face twisted in irritation. Are you serious? Rachel's spying on me now? This is insane. I leaned forward, my hands gripping the edge of the couch. Insane is you lying to me. Insane is living a double life while your wife is pregnant. He waved his hand dismissively. You're blowing things out of proportion. Haley is just a colleague. Colleagues don't hold hands, Tyler. They don't get seen together at luxury spas, I retorted, my voice rising with each word. Tyler's eyes narrowed. You're acting paranoid because of your hormones. Get a grip, Aaron. Stop using that excuse, I shouted, unable to contain my frustration any longer. Did you think I wouldn't find out? Did you think I would just sit here and pretend everything's fine? Tyler glared at me, his voice cold. You're making a scene over nothing. Just back off and leave it alone. Summoning every ounce of courage, I took a deep breath and said, I'm considering hiring a private investigator. I need to know the full truth. He scoffed. Oh, perfect. Waste more money on your pointless paranoia. Do whatever you want, Aaron. I don't care. Before I could respond, a sharp pain surged through my abdomen. I winced, clutching my belly. Aaron, what's wrong? Tyler asked, his tone laced with annoyance, not concern. I think the baby's coming, I managed to say through gritted teeth. Tyler checked his watch, then shook his head. I have a flight in an hour. Call Rachel or something. With that, he grabbed his suitcase and left, the door clicking shut behind him. I couldn't believe what just happened, but there was no time to dwell on it. I grabbed my phone and dialed Rachel. Rachel, it's time. I need to get to the hospital. Rachel's voice was calm but urgent. I'm on my way. Hang tight. When Rachel arrived, she found me pacing in the living room, breathing heavily. She slipped her arm around me, supporting my weight. Let's go, Aaron. It'll be okay. We hurried to her car, speeding to the hospital. By the time we got there, the contractions were coming fast and hard. The nurses quickly set me up in a room, Rachel never leaving my side. You're doing great, Aaron. Just breathe, she kept saying, her presence a lifeline in the chaos. The hours blurred together as I battled through the pain, a mix of fear and determination, driving me forward. Finally, with one last push, I heard my baby's first cry. They placed him on my chest, his tiny body warm against me. He's beautiful, Rachel whispered, tears in her eyes. I held my son close, tears streaming down my face. In that moment, I knew what I had to do. Tyler could abandon us, lie and cheat, but I wouldn't let him break me. Our lives would move forward, powered by love and truth. Rachel's steadfast support was proof I wasn't alone. Together, we'd face whatever came next, our bond stronger than any betrayal. Tyler's absence during labor filled me with a resolve I didn't know I had. As I cradled my newborn son in the hospital room, exhaustion mingled with fierce determination. Rachel was by my side when the nurse handed me my discharge papers. Ready? She asked, knowing the answer was anything but simple. Yeah, let's get home, I replied, strapping my son into his car seat. Rachel gripped my shoulder, offering silent support. We arrived at the house to find Tyler's car gone, a note on the counter, work trip, be back in a week. Typical. I sank into the couch, the reality of my situation crashing down. I can't believe he just left. Again, I muttered. Rachel nodded, anger flashing in her eyes. He won't get away with this, Aaron. We'll figure it out. Days passed in a blur, as I adjusted to life with a newborn and the gnawing presence of Tyler's infidelity. Rachel helped where she could, but the burden weighed heavily. One evening, while feeding my son, the door swung open. Tyler strutted in, suitcase in tow, acting as if nothing had changed. How's everything? He asked nonchalantly. I stared at him, incredulous. How do you think it is, Tyler? You left me alone to give birth. He smirked, shrugging his shoulders. I had a work trip. You knew that. A work trip? I echoed, my voice trembling with anger. You abandoned us. He rolled his eyes. I don't see what the big deal is. You're fine. Rachel stepped in, unable to contain herself. You're unbelievable, Tyler. Aaron needs support, and you're off gallivanting with Haley. He shot her a venomous glare. Stay out of it, Rachel. This is between me and my wife. I handed my son to Rachel, standing to face Tyler. Enough, Tyler. I want a divorce. He laughed, a cruel sound in the quiet room. You're not serious. I am. I can't do this anymore. You've broken every vow you ever made, and I won't raise our child in this toxic environment. Tyler's expression shifted from disbelief to anger. You think you can just walk away? Good luck. You'll be crawling back in no time. Rachel intervened, her voice steady. She's stronger than you know, Tyler. She doesn't need you. Tyler stormed out, leaving the house eerily quiet. Rachel turned to me, her face softened by concern. Are you sure about this? I nodded, my resolve unshakable. He made his choice. Now I'm making mine. The next morning I started the paperwork, determined to separate from Tyler legally and emotionally. Rachel helped every step of the way, ensuring I had everything in order. As the weeks passed, Tyler's absence became the new norm. I focused on my son and building a stable life for us. Moments of self-doubt surfaced, but Rachel's unwavering support kept me grounded. One afternoon, as we walked through the park, Rachel's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then at me. You won't believe this. I've found undeniable proof of Tyler's affair. I took a deep breath, ready for the next step. Show me. Rachel revealed the photos and messages, the final nails in the coffin of my marriage. With this evidence, I knew I could secure not only a divorce, but also full custody of my son. In that moment, standing in the park with Rachel and my baby, I felt a surge of clarity. Tyler's departure marked the beginning of our new life, one built on strength, resilience, and the support of those who truly cared. It was time to fully embrace this fresh start and leave the pain behind. The next few days were a whirlwind. Rachel and I gathered all the evidence she had uncovered, each piece of it a knife that cut through the remnants of my trust in Tyler. Armed with photos, messages, and receipts, I felt a mix of determination and dread. One evening, as I fed my baby, the front door clicked open. Tyler stepped in, looking more disheveled than usual. I didn't expect you to still be here, he muttered, setting his bag down with a thud. I stayed calm, sparing him a glance. We need to talk, he scoffed, looking around the room. What now, Aaron? More accusations? I kept my voice steady. Rachel found more evidence, pictures, messages, everything showing your affair with Haley. Tyler's eyes widened before quickly narrowing. Rachel, this is harassment, pure and simple. I shook my head. No, Tyler, this is the truth. I handed him the folder, watching his expression shift from anger to panic. He threw the papers across the room, making the baby cry. This is nonsense. I can explain. Rachel stepped in, cradling my son, soothing him. Explain what, Tyler? You're a liar, plain and simple. Tyler lunged towards her, but I stepped between them, blocking his path. This is over, Tyler. I'm moving out. You're making a big mistake, Aaron, he growled, his voice full of venom. I'm doing what's best for our son, I replied, meeting his gaze with unwavering resolve. The next morning, I packed our belongings. Rachel arrived in her truck, ready to help. You're making the right decision, she said, hugging me tightly. By the time Tyler returned from work, the house was nearly empty. He stared in disbelief. You're really leaving? I nodded, feeling the weight lift off my shoulders. Yes, Tyler. I'm done. We moved in with Rachel temporarily. Her home was a sanctuary, a place where love and support replaced anger and betrayal. I focused on my son, finding strength in his innocent smiles. Rachel continued her investigations, determined to uncover every detail of Tyler's infidelity. One afternoon, she called me over to her laptop. Aaron, you need to see this. She showed me a series of photos, each more damning than the last. Tyler and Haley were more than colleagues. They were inseparable. Enough is enough, I said, my voice steady. It's time to confront him publicly. We planned the confrontation carefully. Tyler's company's annual gala was approaching, a perfect opportunity to expose him in front of his peers. I dressed confidently for the event, a stark contrast to the timid woman I had been. As we arrived, I spotted Tyler laughing with his colleagues. Rachel handed me the microphone. You've got this, Aaron. I took a deep breath and stepped onto the stage, catching Tyler's eye. His smile faltered as I began. Ladies and gentlemen, I have something to share, I announced, holding up the evidence. Tyler, would you care to explain these photos and texts? Gasps echoed through the room as the evidence displayed on the screen behind me. Tyler stormed towards me, fury in his eyes. Aaron, what the hell are you doing? This is insane! I stood my ground, my voice unwavering. No, Tyler, what's insane is betraying your pregnant wife and abandoning her during labor. The crowd murmured, his colleagues looking on in shock and anger. Tyler's boss stepped forward, his face stern. "Tyler, I think it's best if you leave. We'll discuss your position on Monday." Haley, who had been standing to the side, turned and walked away, her face pale. Tyler's world crumbled before him, his reputation shattered in seconds. As I walked off the stage, I felt a sense of closure. The past was behind me, and the path ahead was clear. Rachel met me at the door, her smile full of pride. "You did it, Aaron," I nodded, holding my son close. "We did it." In that moment, I knew we would be just fine, ready to embrace whatever came next. The morning after the gala, the news of Tyler's public disgrace was all over social media. His reputation was in tatters. At Rachel's house, we sat in the kitchen, the baby gurgling happily in his high chair. Rachel scrolled through her phone, shaking her head. "Aaron, you should see what people are saying." "Tyler's getting slammed," Rachel said, passing me the phone. The comments were brutal. Colleagues, acquaintances, even strangers expressing their disgust. Yet, a sense of vindication washed over me. Suddenly, my phone vibrated. The caller ID flashed Tyler's name. Taking a deep breath, I answered. "Aaron," Tyler's voice cracked. "Can we talk?" "There's nothing left to discuss, Tyler," I said firmly. "Please, Aaron, I lost my job. I'm sorry for everything," he pleaded. "Sorry doesn't change what you did. It doesn't erase the lies or the betrayal," I responded, my voice unwavering. He was silent for a moment, then said, "I need to see our son. I have rights." "Your actions have consequences, Tyler. We'll see what the court has to say about your rights." I hung up, feeling a mix of relief and resolve. Rachel looked at me, her eyes filled with sympathy. "You okay?" I nodded. "Better than ever." Over the next few weeks, Tyler's life continued to spiral. He struggled to find employment, his savings dwindling fast. Haley vanished from his life, distancing herself from the fallout. Meanwhile, I focused on building a stable life for my son and me. Rachel and I found a small, cozy apartment. It wasn't much, but it was ours, a fresh start. One afternoon, as I settled into our new place, Rachel burst in, waving an envelope. "Aaron, these are the divorce papers." She handed them to me with a smile. "Tyler has been served." A weight lifted off my shoulders as I signed them. "Thank you, Rachel, for everything." Rachel grinned. "You're strong, Aaron. Stronger than you know." The next step was custody. My lawyer, who Rachel had recommended, gathered all the evidence of Tyler's neglect and infidelity. We were prepared for the hearing, confident justice would be on our side. On the day of the hearing, Tyler showed up looking defeated. He glanced at me, his eyes pleading, but I held his gaze firmly, feeling no sympathy. The judge reviewed our case, the evidence compelling. Tyler's behavior was indefensible. The verdict was swift, sole custody awarded to me. Tyler was granted limited visitation, under supervision. As we left the courtroom, Tyler approached me, desperation in his voice. "Aaron, I made a mistake. Can we try to work this out?" I shook my head, resolute. "There's nothing to work out, Tyler. This is your mess to clean up. My life and my baby's future are better without you." Tyler's shoulders slumped, defeated. I walked away, Rachel by my side, feeling stronger and more in control than ever. Life continued to improve. I secured a new job, balancing work and motherhood with Rachel's unwavering support. Every small victory, every smile from my son reinforced my decision. One evening, as we celebrated another milestone, Rachel raised her glass. "To new beginnings and the incredible strength of the human spirit. Aaron, you and your son deserve every happiness." I clinked my glass with hers, smiling brightly. "To new beginnings." As I looked around at the life I had begun to rebuild, I knew the worst was behind us. No matter what challenges lay ahead, we were ready. Tyler's departure and the betrayal had forged a resilience that would carry us through any storm. With Rachel's friendship, my son's love, and the newfound strength within me, I was ready to embrace the future with hope, confidence, and the knowledge that we were finally free. Tyler's life continued its downward spiral. He'd lost his job, Haley was gone, and he was struggling with mounting debts. One afternoon, I received an unexpected call from Amanda, Tyler's estranged mother. "Aaron, I know it's been a long time, but I'd like to meet and talk," she said, her voice tinged with worry. I hesitated before agreeing to meet her at a nearby cafe. When I arrived, Amanda looked worn, her eyes reflecting years of unresolved tension. "Thank you for coming," she said softly. "What do you want, Amanda?" I asked, keeping my tone respectful yet guarded. She sighed deeply. "I've heard about everything. Tyler's downfall, the divorce. I needed to see you." I appreciate your concern, but Tyler's choices are his own, I replied, crossing my arms. Amanda nodded. That's true, but there are things you need to know about his past. His father, our family life, it wasn't easy. His behavior, while inexcusable, has roots in deep fears and unresolved trauma. I narrowed my eyes. And why tell me this now? Because you deserve to know what shaped him. Not to excuse it, but to understand, she replied, her voice trembling. I listened as she recounted the years of neglect, the emotional abuse Tyler had suffered from his father. It painted a picture of a boy desperate for validation, who grew into a man incapable of commitment and honesty. He needs help, Aaron, Amanda said, tears welling up. He's my son, and I fear what might happen if he doesn't get it. I paused, absorbing her words. I'll consider it, Amanda, but my priority is my son. Amanda looked relieved, reaching out to squeeze my hand. You're a strong woman, Aaron. Thank you for listening. As I left the cafe, my phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. How did it go? I replied. Complicated. I'll fill you in later. Back at home, I focused on my son, playing and laughing with him. His joy was infectious, a reminder of the bright future I was building. Rachel came over later, settling in with a cup of coffee. So what did Amanda say? Rachel asked, curiosity evident in her eyes. I recounted the conversation, Rachel listening intently. Sounds heavy, she said, frowning, but it doesn't change what Tyler did. No, it doesn't, I agreed, but maybe understanding his past can help us navigate the future. Over time, the memories of betrayal dulled, replaced by new ones filled with love and growth. Tyler tried to contact me a few more times, each plea sounding more desperate. I remained firm, focusing on forging a new path for my son and me. One day, while at the park, I saw Tyler from a distance. He looked disheveled, his haggard frame a stark contrast to the man I once knew. He spotted us and approached cautiously. Aaron, can we talk? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I stood tall, my son's hand in mine. There's nothing left to say, Tyler. You need to focus on your own recovery. He nodded slowly, eyes filled with regret. I'm trying, Aaron. I really am. Good, I replied, turning to leave. For your sake and ours. Walking away, I felt a sense of closure. Tyler's choices and the pain they caused had shaped us, but they didn't define us. With Rachel's unwavering support and the love for my son, I was ready to embrace the future. As the sun set, casting a warm glow on the park, I knew we were headed towards brighter days. The past was behind us and the road ahead was ours to conquer. Stronger, wiser, and forever resilient, we continued forward, ready for whatever life had in store. I laid in bed, restless, my mind racing with the conversation from earlier that evening. Aaron's words echoed in my head. Your family, Beth. Just let us build on Grandpa's land. We deserve it too. How could he say that? That land was sacred, meant for Grandpa's dream project, a community center where he could share his passion for woodworking with the neighborhood kids. It was his dying wish, and I intended to honor it. Aaron always had a way of making me feel guilty, like I owed him something. But this time it felt different, like he was taking advantage of our familial bond for his own selfish gain. I tossed and turned, replaying the scenario. What? That land was meant for Grandpa's dream project. I had protested, my voice trembling with disbelief. Aaron's words cut deep. Come on, sis. We're not asking for much, just a small piece of that vast property. You know you can't handle all of it alone. Alone. The word stung. It had been 3 years since my husband passed, leaving me to manage Grandpa's carpentry business single-handedly. But I wasn't helpless, and I certainly didn't need Aaron's pity or his demands. Still, the nagging guilt persisted. Aaron was family, after all, and he had a point. The land was vast, and maintaining it was a constant struggle. Perhaps I could compromise, allocate a small portion for him to build on, while preserving the rest for Grandpa's vision. With a heavy sigh, I made my decision. I would hear Aaron out, but on my terms. Grandpa's dream would not be compromised, no matter what. A few days later, Aaron's wife, Ally, showed up at my doorstep, clutching a thick folder adorned with an architectural firm's logo. She barged in without so much as a greeting, her expression stern and unyielding. Here are the blueprints, she announced, slamming the folder onto the kitchen table. As you can see, we have everything planned out in meticulous detail. I opened the folder, my eyes widening at the elaborate designs. An entire mansion? But I thought we agreed on a modest house. Ally scoffed, her perfectly sculpted eyebrows arching in disdain. "Don't be ridiculous, Beth. We deserve a home that matches our status and success. This is non-negotiable." My throat tightened as I flipped through the pages, each one more extravagant than the last. Grand foyers, multiple wings, even a private theater. It was excessive, to say the least. "But what about Grandpa's dream project?" I protested weakly. "We can't just pave over the entire property for your palace." Ally's piercing gaze bore into me, her lips curling into a condescending smirk. "Oh, please, that silly little community center? It's time to let go of the past and embrace the future, Beth. Our future." Her words stung like a slap across the face. How dare she dismiss Grandpa's lifelong dream so callously? The very dream that had sustained his spirit through countless hardships. The dream he had entrusted to me on his deathbed. I opened my mouth to argue, but Ally held up a perfectly manicured hand, effectively silencing me. "Save your breath. This is happening, whether you like it or not. We'll be expecting the funds for construction within the month." With that, she turned on her heel and strode out, leaving me to stare helplessly at the blueprints that threatened to consume everything Grandpa had worked so hard for. My hands trembled with a mixture of rage and despair. How could they be so heartless, so utterly devoid of respect for the man who had taken me in and raised me as his own? Didn't our shared history mean anything to them? I slumped into a chair, the weight of their demands crushing me. It seemed that no matter how hard I fought, they would always find a way to strip me of my dignity, to trample over the legacy that meant everything to me. But as the initial shock subsided, a familiar fire began to burn within me, the same fire that had fueled Grandpa's determination in the face of adversity. I would not let them win, not without a fight. It was time to take a stand, to protect the dream that had shaped my very existence. With renewed resolve, I gathered the blueprints and began formulating a plan. If Aaron and Ally wanted a battle, they would get one, and this time I intended to emerge victorious, no matter the cost. The next morning I found myself at the hospital, visiting my ailing father John. As I approached his room, I overheard Ally's shrill voice echoing in the hallway. "It's just so awful, isn't it? But until he's gone, we can't get what's truly ours." My heart sank as the meaning of her words registered. She was talking about Dad's inheritance. My inheritance, the one tied to Grandpa's land and his dream project. I peered around the corner, and there she was, phone pressed to her ear, oblivious to my presence. Her face was twisted into an expression of pure disgust, as if the very thought of my father's existence repulsed her. I know," she continued, her voice dripping with impatience. "But the sooner he kicks the bucket, the sooner we can finally live the life we deserve. No more scraping by, no more sacrifices." My hands balled into fists at my sides, nails digging into my palms. How could she be so callous, so utterly devoid of human decency? This was her own father-in-law she was talking about, a man who had welcomed her into our family with open arms. Bile rose in my throat as the full weight of her words hit me. She wasn't just after Grandpa's land, she was after everything. Every last penny of our inheritance, and she was willing to wish death upon my father to get it. In that moment, something shifted within me. The anger, the resentment, the overwhelming sense of injustice, it all crystallized into a single, unwavering purpose. I would not stand idly by while these vultures picked our family legacy apart, piece by piece. Ally finally noticed me standing there, her eyes widening in surprise. "Beth, I didn't see you there." "Save it," I spat, my voice trembling with barely contained fury. "I heard everything." Her face paled, but she quickly regained her composure, her lips curling into a sickly sweet smile. "Oh, you know how it is with family matters. Things get said in the heat of the moment, but we don't really mean them." "Don't insult my intelligence," I growled, taking a step towards her. "I know exactly what you and Aaron are up to, and I won't let you get away with it." For a brief moment, her mask slipped, revealing the true ugliness beneath. Her eyes narrowed, her mouth twisting into a sneer. "You can't stop us, Beth," she hissed. "We're going to take what's rightfully ours, whether you like it or not, and there's nothing you can do about it." With that, she brushed past me, her shoulder colliding with mine in a deliberate show of dominance. But I barely registered the physical contact, my mind already whirring with determination. This was war, plain and simple. and as I stepped into my father's room, my resolve hardened. I would protect our family, our legacy at all costs, no matter what it took. A few days later, Aaron and allies showed up at my doorstep once again, this time with a smug look on their faces that immediately set me on edge. "We've done the math," Aaron announced without preamble, "and to cover the construction costs, we'll need you to fork over $150,000. I stared at him in disbelief, certain I had misheard. $150,000? For a single house? Allie rolled her eyes, as if I were a petulant child questioning the obvious. "Don't be dense, Beth. This is a mansion we're talking about, not some run-of-the-mill hovel. The materials alone are going to cost an arm and a leg." My mind raced, trying to make sense of the outrageous figure. Even if I liquidated every asset and drained my savings, I'd barely scratch the surface of that amount. That's an unreasonable demand," I protested weakly, already sensing the futility of my words. Aaron's expression hardened, his eyes glinting with barely concealed contempt. "Don't give us that crap, sis. We both know you've got Grandpa's inheritance money stashed away somewhere. You owe us at least that much for agreeing to this whole thing." Ally nodded vigorously, her perfectly coiffed hair bouncing with each emphatic bob of her head. "Exactly. It's time to stop being so damn selfish and start sharing the wealth, Beth. We're family, after all." The word family felt like a slap in the face, twisted and perverted beyond recognition by their insatiable greed. How could they claim to care about familial bonds when they were so willing to trample over everything our grandfather had held dear? I need some time to think this over," I stammered, my mind reeling from their audacity. Aaron shrugged, already turning to leave. "Fine, take your time, but we expect that money in full by the end of the month, no excuses." As they walked away, I couldn't help but feel like I was being backed into a corner, forced to choose between preserving my grandfather's legacy and appeasing the insatiable appetites of these two vultures. But deep down, I knew there had to be more to their story, some hidden agenda or ulterior motive driving their outrageous demands. They were playing a game, and I was determined to figure out the rules before it was too late. With trembling fingers, I transferred a lump sum of $20,000 into their account, a token gesture to buy myself some time. Then I made a call to an old friend of my grandfather's, a private investigator who owed him a favor. "I need you to dig into Aaron and Ally's finances," I said, my voice steady and resolved. "There's something they're not telling me, and I intend to find out what it is." This was just the beginning, I knew, but for the first time, I felt a glimmer of hope that I might be able to turn the tables and reclaim what was rightfully mine, and honor my grandfather's memory in the process. A week later, the private investigator I'd hired called me with some startling news about Aaron and Ally's finances. "Well, it's not looking good for them," he said without preamble. "Their business is deep in the red, and they've been defaulting on loan payments left and right." My heart sank as the pieces began to fall into place. "So that's why they were demanding so much money from me." "Exactly," he confirmed. "And get this, they recently booked an extravagant vacation to the Bahamas, blowing through what little savings they had left." White-hot fury coursed through my veins as the full extent of their betrayal became clear. They had no intention of using my inheritance to build their dream home. They were simply trying to dig themselves out of a financial hole of their own making, all while living it up on a lavish tropical getaway. Those lying, manipulative snakes! I seethed, my hands balling into fists. They were playing me this whole time, trying to bleed me dry for their own selfish gains. The investigator let out a low whistle. "You got that right. And from the looks of it, they were planning to skip town after draining your accounts, leaving you high and dry." A sudden thought occurred to me, and I felt a rush of determination unlike anything I'd ever experienced before. Not if I have anything to say about it. Without another word, I hung up the phone and immediately called my old friend Ron, a seasoned lawyer who had worked closely with my grandfather over the years. "Ron, I need your help," I said, laying out the entire sordid tale of Aaron and Ally's deceit. "They've been trying to swindle me out of my inheritance, and I want to make sure they pay for what they've done." There was a brief pause on the other end of the line before Ron spoke, his voice laced with grim resolve. "Say no more, Beth. We're going to make sure those two get what's coming to them and protect your grandfather's legacy in the process. Over the next few days, we worked tirelessly, poring over legal documents and crafting an ironclad plan. By the time Aaron and Ally returned from their ill-gotten vacation, everything was in place. Their smug grins quickly faded when they saw the construction crews hard at work on the property, but not on the palatial mansion they had envisioned. "What the hell is this?" Aaron demanded, his face flushing with rage as he stormed over to where I stood, arms crossed defiantly. "This is your dream home, brother dear," I replied, unable to keep the satisfaction from creeping into my voice. "A brand new community center, just like Grandpa always wanted." As realization dawned on their faces, I felt a sense of vindication wash over me. The tables had finally turned, and this time, I was the one holding all the cards. Aaron's face turned a deep shade of crimson as he lunged towards me, his hands balled into tight fists. "What the hell is this? This isn't what we agreed upon." I stood my ground, unflinching in the face of his rage. "On the contrary, brother dear, this is exactly what we agreed upon, or rather, what I agreed to." Ron stepped forward, brandishing a thick stack of documents. "The final signed contract is for the construction of a community center on this property. Beth owns the land outright, and she has every legal right to proceed with her grandfather's vision." Ally's shrill voice cut through the tension like a knife. "You can't do this. We had a deal." "A deal?" I scoffed, shaking my head in disbelief. "You mean the deal where you tried to swindle me out of my inheritance to fund your lavish lifestyle? The one where you wished for our own father's death just so you could get your grubby hands on his money?" Their faces drained of color as the truth hung in the air, laid bare for all to see. In that moment, they looked small, pathetic, the facade of their supposed success crumbling around them. "How did you—" Ally stammered, her voice trembling with fear. "I have my ways," I replied coolly, "and thanks to your little confession at the hospital, I have all the evidence I need to make sure you never see a single penny of our family's money." Aaron's eyes narrowed, his lips curling into a snarl. "You can't prove anything. It's your word against ours." With a flick of my wrist, I produced my phone and hit play, Ally's damning words filling the air like a noxious cloud. "It's awful, isn't it? But until he's gone, we can't get what's truly ours." Silence hung thick in the air as the recording ended, the weight of their betrayal crushing down upon them. Aaron's shoulders slumped in defeat, while Ally buried her face in her hands, her perfectly manicured nails doing little to hide her shame. "You're ruined," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Both of you. Your greed has cost you everything." As if on cue, a sleek black sedan pulled up, and two imposing figures emerged. Aaron's boss and a representative from the loan company they were in debt to. "Aaron Carter," the boss bellowed, his face twisted in disgust. "I've just been made aware of your extracurricular activities. Consider yourself fired, effective immediately." The loan representative stepped forward, brandishing a stack of papers. "And as for you, Mrs. Carter, we'll be initiating foreclosure proceedings on your home and assets to recoup the outstanding debts. You're both officially bankrupt." As they were led away, defeated and humiliated, I couldn't help but feel a sense of bittersweet triumph. They had brought this upon themselves, allowing their greed and selfishness to consume them until there was nothing left. And as for me, I had preserved my grandfather's legacy, ensuring that his dream would live on long after those who sought to destroy it were nothing but a distant memory. In the aftermath of Aaron and Ally's public humiliation, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. The storm had passed, and I had emerged victorious, but at what cost? As I sat alone in the silence of my grandfather's woodshop, running my fingers over the smooth, worn surface of his workbench, I couldn't help but wonder if he would have approved of the lengths I'd gone to protect his dream. A soft knock at the door pulled me from my reverie, and I turned to see Ron standing in the doorway, a somber expression on his face. "Beth," he said, stepping inside, "I know this hasn't been easy for you, but I think you did the right thing." I let out a weary sigh, my shoulders slumping under the weight of my conflicted emotions. "Did I, though? I mean, I practically destroyed my own brother's life. What kind of person does that make me?" Ron's brow furrowed as he considered my words. A person who was willing to do whatever it took to preserve her family's legacy, he said finally. Aaron and Ally brought this upon themselves with their greed and deceit. You simply leveled the playing field. His words rang true, but still, a part of me couldn't shake the nagging sense of guilt. These were people I had once loved and trusted, after all, family. As if sensing my inner turmoil, Ron reached into his briefcase and produced a small recording device. I think you should hear this, he said, pressing play. Ally's voice filled the room, her tone dripping with disdain as she spat the words I had overheard at the hospital. It's awful, isn't it? But until he's gone, we can't get what's truly ours. I flinched, the memory of those words still fresh and raw, like a jagged shard of glass piercing my heart. But then, Ron rewound the tape and played it again, this time with the full context. And that's why we need to sort out this mess with Beth before Dad passes away. It's awful, isn't it? But until he's gone, we can't get what's truly ours, a chance to make things right and honor Grandpa's legacy. My breath caught in my throat as the true meaning of her words sank in. They hadn't been wishing for our father's death at all. They had been lamenting the fact that they wouldn't be able to make amends until after he was gone. Tears stung my eyes as the weight of my mistake came crashing down upon me. I had let my anger and suspicion blind me to the truth, lashing out in a misguided quest for vengeance. "Oh, Ron," I whispered, my voice thick with remorse. "What have I done?" But even as the guilt threatened to consume me, a glimmer of hope shone through. Aaron and Ally's lives might have been shattered, but they were still alive, and there was still a chance, however slim, to make things right. With renewed determination, I turned to Ron, my jaw set in a firm line. "We need to find them," I said, my voice steady and resolute, "and we need to make this right, no matter what it takes." The road ahead would be long and arduous, but for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I had a sense of purpose, not just to preserve my grandfather's legacy, but to heal the deep wounds I had inflicted upon my own family. It was time to find redemption, one painful step at a time. It took months of searching, but eventually, Ron and I managed to track down Aaron and Ally. They had hit rock bottom, living out of a dilapidated motel, scraping by on menial jobs just to put food on the table. When I first laid eyes on them, huddled together in that dingy room, it was as if the weight of the world had come crashing down upon their shoulders. Aaron, once so full of swagger and bravado, now looked small and defeated, his eyes hollow and haunted. And Ally, who had always carried herself with such poise and confidence, was a mere shadow of her former self, her once immaculate appearance now disheveled and unkempt. For a moment I wavered, the old anger and resentment threatening to resurface, but then I remembered my purpose, redemption, healing, and the chance to make things right. "Aaron, Ally," I said, my voice steady despite the tumult of emotions raging within me. "We need to talk." They regarded me warily like cornered animals, and I couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt at the fear and distrust etched onto their faces. "What do you want from us?" Aaron spat, his voice tinged with bitterness. "Haven't you taken enough?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I knew would be a difficult conversation. "I want to apologize," I said, the words feeling foreign on my tongue. "I made a terrible mistake, and in my quest for vengeance I let my anger blind me to the truth." Ally's brow furrowed, confusion and skepticism warring across her features. "What are you talking about?" Slowly, I recounted the events that had led me down this path, the misinterpreted conversation, the assumption of their ill intent, and the devastating consequences that followed. As I spoke, their expressions shifted from guarded to stunned, the realization of my mistake dawning on them like a cruel twist of fate. "Beth," Aaron breathed, his voice barely above a whisper. "We never meant for any of this to happen." Tears stung my eyes as I nodded, the weight of my guilt threatening to crush me. "I know," I said, my voice thick with emotion, "and I am so sorry." In that moment something shifted between us. A wall built upon years of resentment and mistrust began to crumble. Ally reached out, her hand trembling, and took mine in a gesture of tentative forgiveness. "We were all blinded by our own desires," she said, her voice tinged with regret, "but that doesn't excuse what we put you through." And just like that, the floodgates opened, and we poured out our hearts to one another. laying bare the pain and misunderstandings that had festered for far too long. It was a cathartic release, a cleansing of the soul that left us all drained but oddly at peace. As the sun began to set outside the grimy motel window, casting long shadows across the room, I knew that our journey was far from over. There would be more challenges to face, more wounds to heal, and more bridges to mend. But in that moment, surrounded by the love and forgiveness of my family, I felt a sense of contentment that I hadn't experienced in years. Grandpa's dream had been realized, his legacy preserved, and now with Aaron and Ally by my side, the future looked brighter than ever. "We're going to get through this," I said, my voice ringing with conviction. "Together." And as we embraced, a newfound bond forged in the fires of our shared tribulations, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them as a united front, a family, whole and unbroken, standing tall in the face of adversity. For in that moment, I had found something far more precious than any inheritance or material possession, the true meaning of redemption and the unshakable power of love to heal even the deepest of wounds.
The call came on a Tuesday, exactly 15 years after my father told me I wasn't worth the air I breathed. I was in the middle of a board meeting when my assistant slipped me a note. "Your mother's calling, third time today. My name is Quinn, and I built a tech empire from the ground up while my family pretended I didn't exist. Funny how life works sometimes. We need to wrap this up," I told my executives, maintaining my composure despite the tremor in my hands. "Send me the final projections by tomorrow morning." In my office, I stared at my mother's number on my phone screen, the same number I'd memorized as a child, back when I still believed family meant something. "Quinn." Her voice was smaller than I remembered. "Baby, is that you?" "It's me." I kept my tone neutral, professional. The Manhattan skyline stretched out behind my desk, a view I'd earned while they wrote me off. "We've been trying to reach you." A pause. "Your father, he wants to talk." I almost laughed. 15 years of silence, and now he wants to talk. "Things are different now. We've seen you in the papers, on TV, your company, what you've built." She trailed off, probably remembering the day they kicked me out. I was 17 then. Dad had gathered everyone in the living room. Mom, my brothers Damon and Rodney. "No daughter of mine is going to waste time with computers," he'd declared. "You'll marry well, that's your purpose." I'd refused, packed my bags that night. "Quinn?" Mom's voice pulled me back. "There's a family dinner on Friday. Please come." "Why should I?" "Because," she hesitated, "your father's business. We're struggling. The market crash hit us hard. He needs my money." I finished for her. "That's what this is about. No. We want to make amends. We were wrong, Quinn. So wrong." I swiveled in my chair, watching my reflection in the window. The scared teenage girl was gone, replaced by a woman in a tailored suit who controlled a billion-dollar tech company. "Text me the details," I said finally. "I'll think about it." After hanging up, I called Kayla, my business partner, and the only person who knew the full story of my past. They reached out. She sounded concerned. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to that dinner." I pulled up my calendar. "But first, I need you to clear my schedule for Friday and book a table at Le Bernardin." "Quinn." Kayla's voice carried a warning. "Don't do anything rash." "Rash? No." I smiled, remembering how Dad used to parade my brothers around at business functions while I sat in the corner, invisible. "I'm going to do something spectacular." That evening, I dug out an old photo album I kept locked in my desk. There I was, 12 years old, proudly showing Dad the computer program I'd written. He wasn't even looking at me. Next to it, a picture of Damon receiving a sports trophy, Dad beaming with pride. My phone buzzed. Mom's text with the dinner details. "Your father says to dress appropriately," she added in a second message. I texted back, "Change of plans. I'm hosting. Le Bernardin, 8 p.m. Tell Dad his precious sons can come too." Then I called Carlos, my PR specialist. "I need you to arrange something. Discreet photographers, carefully placed. Make sure they catch every moment." "What's the angle?" he asked. I thought about Dad's face when he'd realize his daughter now had the power to make or break him. About Mom's silent compliance all those years. About my brother's smirks when I was thrown out. Family reconciliation, I said. The prodigal daughter returns. But that's just the beginning. And the real story. I touched the photo of my 12-year-old self, tracing the hope in those eyes before it was crushed. The real story is revenge. But we're going to package it as redemption. I closed the album. They wanted a proper daughter. I'll give them a proper show. After hanging up, I stood at my window, watching the city lights flicker to life. Somewhere out there, my family was probably huddled together, discussing how to handle me, how to get what they needed while maintaining their precious pride. Let them plan. Let them think they could manipulate me. I'd learned from the best after all. Friday couldn't come soon enough. I had 15 years of silence to fill, and I was going to make every word count. They wanted my help? They'd get it, along with a very public lesson in karma. I picked up my phone one last time and texted Kayla, book the private room, and make sure there's champagne. We're going to celebrate a family reunion they'll never forget. Le Bernardin's private room felt smaller with my family in it. Dad arrived first, of course. Punctuality was one of his obsessions. His silver hair was thinner than I remembered, but his stance remained rigid, commanding. Quinn. He extended his hand like we were closing a business deal. You look successful. I ignored his hand. 15 years will do that. Mom hurried in behind him, wringing her hands, a nervous habit I'd inherited and trained myself to break. She moved to hug me, then stopped, uncertain. Your hair, she said softly. It's so elegant now. Damon and Rodney arrived together, both in expensive suits that couldn't quite hide their desperation. Damon's Rolex was probably his last status symbol, while Rodney's shoes were scuffed at the heels. Little sister, Damon said, forcing a smile. Finally decided to acknowledge your family. Funny, I replied, taking my seat at the head of the table. I was about to say the same thing. The waiter appeared with champagne, and I watched them squirm as I ordered the most expensive bottle. Dad's eye twitched. He knew exactly how much it cost. To family, I raised my glass. And perfect timing. Damon cleared his throat. Quinn, about timing. Your company's incredible, Rodney interrupted, earning a glare from Dad. I mean, the Innovation Awards, the Forbes cover, the money, I added, making them all flinch. That's what you really want to discuss, isn't it? Dad set down his glass. We've made mistakes. Mistakes, I laughed. Is that what we're calling it now? Quinn, Mom pleaded. We're trying. You're trying because you're desperate. I pulled out my tablet, sliding it across the table. Your company's hemorrhaging money, Dad. 3 failed projects in 2 years. The board's considering a vote of no confidence. The color drained from his face. How did you? I do my research. Unlike you, I learned from my mistakes. I tapped the tablet. Damon's division is particularly interesting. Those investment choices. Amateur hour. Damon's knuckles went white around his fork. You don't understand. Actually, I do. Better than anyone. I leaned forward. You need my help. My connections. My money. But mostly, you need my name. The waiter arrived with appetizers, and we all pretended to be fascinated by our plates. What do you want? Dad finally asked, his voice rough. I'm hosting a gala next month. Women in Tech Initiative. Very prestigious. Lots of media coverage. I watched their faces carefully. You're all going to attend, as my loving, supportive family. Rodney frowned. That's it? Oh, there's more. I smiled. Dad, you'll give a speech about how proud you are of your daughter's achievements. Damon, you'll announce a new division in your company, focused on supporting women in STEM fields. That's ridiculous, Damon sputtered. Our shareholders will love it. Trust me, I've done the math. I turned to Mom. And you, Mother, will be the face of a new scholarship program for girls interested in technology. The silence was deafening. Dad's jaw clenched so tight, I thought he might crack a tooth. And if we refuse, he asked, then I'll watch from my office as your empire crumbles. I shrugged. Either way, I win. Mom touched Dad's arm. Colin, maybe. Fine, he cut her off. We'll play your game. It's not a game. I stood up, dropping my napkin on the table. It's karma, and we're just getting started. You've become quite the manipulator, Damon said bitterly. I learned from the best, big brother. I gathered my things. Carlos, my PR specialist, will be in touch with details. Don't worry, he'll make sure you all look appropriately progressive and enlightened. Quinn, Mom called as I reached the door. Was any of this, did you really want to reconnect? I turned back, seeing the hope in her eyes, the same hope I'd had all those years ago. You know what's funny? I said. If you'd reached out before you needed something, this might have gone differently. I left them sitting there, surrounded by expensive food and bitter realizations. Outside, the night air felt clean, liberating. My phone buzzed. A text from Kayla. How'd it go? Perfectly, I replied. They took the bait. Call Carlos. It's time for phase 2. As my car pulled up, I caught my reflection in the window. I looked exactly like what I'd become. Powerful, untouchable, and absolutely merciless, just like they'd taught me to be. This is delicious, Carlos said, taking another bite of his croissant. Almost as delicious as your plan. We were in my penthouse office, surrounded by mood boards and event layouts for the gala. Kayla sat cross-legged on the floor, sorting through potential media contacts. The press will eat this up, Carlos continued. Tech mogul reconciles with traditional family, transforming them into champions of women's empowerment. It's perfect. Too perfect, Kayla muttered. Quinn, are you sure about this? I walked to the window, watching a flock of pigeons scatter across the morning sky. Show me the speech drafts. Carlos pulled out his tablet. I've written 3 versions for your father. This one's my favorite. I was wrong. My greatest achievement wasn't building a company. It was raising a daughter who showed me the true meaning of success. He'll choke on those words, I said, smiling. That's the point. Carlos swiped through more documents. Damon's announcement about the women's STEM division is ready too. We've already leaked hints to industry blogs. My phone buzzed. Speaking of Damon. Excuse me, I said, stepping into the hallway. We need to talk, he growled. Alone. 20 minutes later, I found him pacing in the lobby of my building. He looked worse than at dinner, tie loose, hair disheveled. Making me come to you? He sneered. Power move. My building, my rules. I led him to a private conference room. What do you want? He ran a hand through his hair. This little revenge fantasy of yours. It needs to stop. Or what? You don't understand what's at stake. He slammed his fist on the table. Dad's company isn't just struggling. We're weeks away from collapse. The board meeting next month. I know all about the board meeting. I sat down, crossing my legs. Just like I know about your offshore accounts. His face went pale. How did you? The same way I know about Rodney's gambling debts. The same way I know Mom's been secretly taking anti-anxiety medication for 20 years. I leaned forward. I did my homework, Damon. All of it. So this is blackmail? This is opportunity. Play your part, and I'll make sure the board sees your new initiative as innovative leadership. The women's STEM division will attract fresh investors, positive press. And if I refuse, then I'll watch you drown. I stood up. Just like you watched them throw me out. He grabbed my arm as I turned to leave. You were always the smart one, he said quietly. Even back then. I should have. I pulled away. Should have what? Stood up for me? Protected your little sister. I was afraid, he admitted, of disappointing him, of losing my place. And now you're afraid of losing everything. I straightened my jacket. Funny how life works out. Back in my office, Kayla and Carlos were arguing over seating arrangements. The media needs clear sight lines, Carlos insisted. Every camera should capture their faces when Quinn announces the scholarship program. Speaking of which, Kayla interrupted as I entered. We need to talk about your mother. What about her? She called while you were gone, wanted to meet for coffee. Kayla hesitated. She seemed different. I remembered Mom's face at dinner, the way she'd almost hugged me. Different doesn't change anything, doesn't it? Kayla stood up. Quinn, I've known you for 10 years. You're not just doing this for revenge. Stay focused, I snapped. Carlos, what's next? He checked his notes. We need your family's measurements for the gala outfits, and we should schedule a photo shoot. Something casual, showing the reconciliation process. Fine, I picked up a layout board. What about the scholarship announcement? Already trending on social media, he grinned. The mysterious tech CEO, planning something big. Speculation is through the roof. My phone buzzed again, Dad this time. I ignored it. Quinn, Kayla said softly. What happens after, when the gala's over? I stared at the mood board, at the perfect family portrait we'd create. They learn their lesson. And you? What do you learn? Before I could answer, my assistant rushed in. Ms. Quinn, your brother Damon is talking to reporters in the lobby. What? I pulled up the security feed. There he was, surrounded by journalists, looking straight into the cameras. My heart stopped. He's going off script, Carlos said, already dialing his contacts. I watched Damon's lips move, unable to hear his words, but recognizing his expression, the same one he wore the night I left. Get him out of there, I ordered, now. As my team scrambled, I remained frozen, watching my carefully constructed plan teeter on the edge of chaos. Maybe Kayla was right. Maybe this wasn't just about revenge anymore. Maybe it was about something much more dangerous, hope. Your brother's interview is everywhere, Carlos announced, tossing a stack of newspapers onto my desk. But you need to see this. The headline screamed across every front page. Tech mogul's brother confesses, we failed her, and family drama behind Silicon Valley success story. I scanned Damon's quotes. Our father was wrong. Quinn proved that. Now we're trying to make amends, to be the family she deserved. He went rogue, I said. But he stayed on message. Better than on message, Carlos grinned. He cried, Quinn. Actually cried on camera. The internet's eating it up. My phone lit up. Mom again. Third time today. This time, I answered. Have you seen it? She asked. Damon's performance. Yeah. It wasn't a performance. She paused. I'm at the coffee shop near your office. Please, Quinn. 20 minutes. I found her at a corner table, hands wrapped around an untouched latte. She looked smaller than I remembered, more fragile. You're not wearing makeup, I observed, sitting down. I stopped. She met my eyes. After you left, it felt pointless, pretending. Like you pretended not to see what was happening to me. Her hands trembled. I was weak. Every time he dismissed you, I died inside. But I stayed silent. For 15 years. No. She reached into her bag, pulled out a worn folder. I kept everything. Every news article about you. Every achievement. I followed your journey, Quinn. In silence, in shame. But I followed it. I opened the folder. There I was, from my first startup to my IPO. Pictures, clippings, printouts from tech blogs. Some were tear-stained. Why are you showing me this? Because you need to know, her voice cracked. The scholarship program you want me to represent. I want to do it. Not for show, for real. My coffee arrived. I stirred it slowly, buying time. Dad won't like that. Your father just got a call. She leaned forward. The board is moving up their vote. They want him out, Quinn. Unless I help. I closed the folder. And what do you want, Mom? Really want? A chance. She touched my hand. Not just to fix the past, but to do something meaningful. These girls you want to help? I see you in all of them. My phone buzzed. Kayla, reminding me about the gala preparations. I should leave. This wasn't part of the plan. Show me, I said instead. What? Show me you mean it. Come to my office. Meet my team. See what we're really building. An hour later, Mom stood in our innovation lab, watching young women code, create, innovate. Her eyes were wide, taking everything in. "This is incredible," she whispered. "Ms. Quinn," my assistant appeared. "Your father's here. He's demanding to see you." I found him in the lobby, face red with anger. "What did you do?" he demanded. "The board chairman just called. Something about a leaked memo." "I have no idea what you're talking about," I smiled. "But since you're here, let's talk about the gala. Carlos has your speech ready." "Damn the gala." He stepped closer. "You think you can destroy everything I built?" "No, Dad. You're doing that just fine on your own." "Colin." Mom's voice cut through his rage. She stood in the doorway, steel in her spine. "Enough." He blinked, surprised by her tone. "Melina." "I'm staying," she said. "Quinn's showing me the scholarship program. You can either join us in the future or stay in your past." I watched his face cycle through confusion, anger, fear. "You're choosing her?" "I'm choosing what's right." Mom turned to me. "Where do we start?" Before I could answer, Rodney burst in, out of breath. "Dad, the investors, they're calling an emergency meeting. Something about new leadership." Dad's phone rang. His hands shook as he checked the screen. "The chairman." "Take it," I said. "In fact, put it on speaker. Let's all hear what the future holds." As Dad's world crumbled around him, I watched Mom explore my office, touching the awards with pride. Rodney collapsed into a chair, looking lost. Somewhere in the building, Damon's interview was probably still playing on loop. My phone buzzed one last time. "Carlos, everything's proceeding as planned. But Quinn, are you sure you want to go through with the final phase?" I looked at my family, scattered and broken, and maybe, just maybe, ready to rebuild. "Stand by," I texted back. "The game's changing." The question was I ready to change with it? The gala buzzed with energy as New York's elite mingled under crystal chandeliers. I stood at the entrance, greeting guests, while photographers captured every calculated smile. "Your family's already inside," Carlos whispered, appearing at my elbow. "Your father's been practicing his speech. He actually looks nervous." "Good." I smoothed my midnight blue gown. "Where's Mom?" "Talking to the scholarship candidates. She's a natural, Quinn. Those girls adore her." I spotted Damon across the room, surprisingly at ease, as he discussed the Women's STEM initiative with a group of investors. Rodney hovered nearby, actually paying attention for once. "Ms. Quinn?" A young girl approached, maybe 17, clutching a tablet. "I'm one of the scholarship finalists. I just wanted to say, you're why I started coding." My practice smile faltered. She looked exactly like I had at that age. Hungry for recognition, desperate to prove herself. "What's your name?" "Sarah." She pulled up her project on the tablet. "I developed this app for domestic violence survivors. It looks like a normal calculator, but it sends encrypted distress signals." I finished, examining her code. "This is brilliant, Sarah. Your mother said the same thing." She beamed. "She's been showing everyone my work." Before I could respond, the lights dimmed. Carlos appeared again. "It's time." I took the stage, scanning the crowd. Hundreds of faces looked back, including my family's. Dad sat rigid in his chair, speech cards trembling slightly. Mom watched me with tears in her eyes, while my brothers tried to mask their anxiety. "Welcome," I began. 15 years ago, I was told that women don't belong in tech, that our place was in the background, supporting men's dreams instead of chasing our own. The room fell silent. Today we're changing that narrative, not just through words, but through action. I gestured to the screen behind me, where images of young female coders appeared. "Meet our future, 20 brilliant minds who will receive full scholarships to pursue their tech dreams." Applause erupted. I caught Sarah's radiant smile in the crowd. "But first," I continued, "someone else wants to share their journey of transformation." "Dad?" He stood slowly, straightening his tie. The cameras turned to him as he approached the podium. This was it, the moment of my triumph, my revenge. He cleared his throat, looked down at his cards, and then set them aside. "I had a speech prepared," he said, his voice rough, "about progress and change. But watching my daughter tonight, seeing these young women's potential. He turned to me. Quinn, I was wrong. Not just about you, but about everything. The room held its breath. This wasn't the scripted speech Carlos had prepared. I lost 15 years with my daughter because of pride and ignorance. I watched from a distance as she built something extraordinary, while I clung to outdated beliefs that were destroying my own company. Mom reached for Damon's hand. Rodney wiped his eyes. Tonight isn't about saving my business, Dad continued. It's about saving our future. These scholarships, they're named after my wife, Melina, because while I was teaching our sons to lead, she was quietly showing our daughter how to revolutionize. The cameras flashed as Mom joined us on stage, followed by my brothers. Dad turned to me, his eyes glistening. I don't deserve forgiveness, he said, but I'm asking for a chance to support the vision you've built, not as your superior, but as a father who finally sees his daughter's brilliance. The applause was deafening. Carlos gave me a thumbs up. This was better than anything we'd planned, but I barely noticed. The Melina Scholarship Fund, I announced, my voice steady despite my racing heart, will ensure that no other girl hears no when she should hear fly. Sarah and the other candidates joined us on stage. Mom hugged each one, whispering encouragement. Damon shook their hands, looking genuinely impressed. Even Rodney engaged, asking about their projects with real interest. As the evening wound down, I found myself alone with Dad on the balcony. Did you mean it? I asked. Every word. He stared at the city lights. The board voted this morning. I'm stepping down as CEO. I know. They want you to take over. He turned to me. Not because you're my daughter, but because you're better than I ever was. Inside, I could hear Mom laughing with the scholarship recipients. Damon was exchanging contact information with investors. Rodney was actually taking notes. The company needs new leadership, Dad said. It needs you. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something I'd never seen before: respect. We'll talk, I said finally. After all, I have some ideas about modernizing the family business. He smiled, and for the first time in 15 years, it reached his eyes. Your father's speech is trending worldwide, Carlos announced, scrolling through his phone. The video has over 10 million views. Pearson Transformation is the top hashtag. We were in the aftermath meeting, reviewing the gala's impact. The wall of screens behind us displayed news coverage from every major network. The stock's up 30%, Kayla added. Investors are calling non-stop. Everyone wants a piece of the new progressive Pearson empire. I stared at the footage, playing silently on the screens. Dad's emotional speech, Mom hugging the scholarship recipients, my brothers actually looking human. It wasn't supposed to go like this, I muttered. No, Kayla agreed. It was supposed to be revenge. Instead, it's become a revolution, Carlos finished. Speaking of which, Time magazine wants to do a cover story. The family that changed Silicon Valley. My phone buzzed. Damon. Excuse me, I said, stepping out. I found him in the company's lobby, looking up at the massive digital wall displaying our stock price. Remember when Dad used to say women couldn't understand finance? He gestured at the climbing numbers. Guess he was wrong about that too. Among other things, I crossed my arms. What do you want, Damon? The board approved your leadership proposal. He handed me a folder. Dad's stepping down next month. They want you as CEO, me as COO, and get this, they want Mom to head the foundation. And you're okay with that? Working under your little sister. He laughed. I saw the code those scholarship girls wrote. They're better than I'll ever be. Just like you always were. Flattery won't erase the past. No, he agreed, but maybe this will help. He pulled out his phone, showed me an email. I'm selling my house, my cars, everything. The money's going to fund 10 more scholarships. I blinked. What? Rodney too. He's actually meeting with Sarah right now. She's helping him develop an app for gambling addiction recovery. Before I could respond, Mom burst in, practically glowing. Quinn, the foundation just received $1 million donation. Anonymous, but she hesitated. It's from your father. He sold his golf club membership and his collector cars. I sat down hard on a nearby chair. This wasn't how revenge was supposed to feel. There's more, Damon said. Show her, Mom. She pulled up a video on her tablet. Dad was being interviewed on a major news network. My daughter taught me that true legacy isn't about maintaining old power structures, he was saying. It's about embracing change, acknowledging mistakes, and working to create a better future. And your company's new direction, the interviewer asked, is exactly what it should have been 15 years ago. Following Quinn's vision, she saw the future while I was stuck in the past. Now it's time for me to step aside and let her lead. I turned off the tablet. This doesn't fix everything. No, Mom agreed, but it's a start. She touched my arm. The girls from the scholarship program, they're asking if you'll mentor them. I don't know if they need you, she interrupted. Like I needed you. To show us all how to be stronger. My phone buzzed again. Carlos with urgent news. The headlines flashed across my screen. Tech giant announces historic all-female board and Silicon Valley's gender revolution begins. Quinn, Kayla appeared, looking worried. There's something you need to see. She led us to the conference room, where the news was playing on the big screen. A group of female tech CEOs was announcing a partnership with our foundation. They were pledging billions to support women in tech. This is bigger than us now, Damon said quietly. Dad appeared in the doorway, looking uncertain. The press is asking for a family statement. All of us together. I looked at my family, really looked at them. Mom, standing tall and proud. Damon, finally seeing me as an equal. Dad, humbled but trying. Even Rodney, rushing in with Sarah, excitedly showing off their app progress. Quinn, Carlos prompted. What should I tell the press? I thought about the scared 17-year-old girl I'd been, dreaming of this moment. But revenge had turned into something else, something bigger, more important. Tell them, I said, that the future doesn't belong to any one family or gender. It belongs to everyone brave enough to change. Dad smiled. Now that's a legacy worth building. Together, Mom asked. I looked at the scholarship girls watching us through the glass walls, their faces full of hope and determination. This wasn't just about healing my family anymore. It was about making sure no other girl had to fight the battles I did. Together, I agreed. But on one condition, we do it right this time. And how's that? Damon asked. I smiled. By breaking every glass ceiling we can find. You can't hide in your office forever, Kayla said, barging in with a stack of papers. The transition ceremony is in 2 hours. I was staring at an anonymous email that had arrived that morning. Your family's transformation is a lie. I have proof. Meet me or it goes public. Quinn? Kayla waved her hand in front of my face. Earth to CEO? Someone knows, I said, turning my laptop around. About the original plan. The revenge plot. Kayla read the email, her face darkening. Could be a bluff. Or it could destroy everything we've built. I stood up, pacing. The scholarships, the foundation, all of it. Quinn, Sarah burst in, her eyes bright. Sorry to interrupt, but you have to see this. She pulled up a video on her tablet. A teenage girl was speaking at a tech conference, wearing a t-shirt with my face on it. Quinn showed us that we don't need anyone's permission to change the world. The girl was saying, my dad used to tell me tech wasn't for girls. Now he's helping me build my startup. That's the 5th speech like this week, Sarah beamed. You're starting a movement. My phone buzzed, the anonymous emailer again. 1 hour, coffee shop across the street. I have to go, I told Kayla. Cover for me at the pre-ceremony meeting. The coffee shop was crowded, but I spotted him immediately. Rodney sitting alone in the corner, holding an old USB drive. You? I sat down, stunned. You sent the email? Found this while cleaning out my old room. He slid the drive across the table. It's your revenge plan. All the details, the manipulation, everything. You left it on your computer the night you ran away. My hands shook as I picked up the drive. Why didn't you tell Dad? Because I was ashamed. He looked down. I saw what you were planning, but I did nothing. Just like I did nothing when they kicked you out. And now? Now I see what you've actually built. He gestured outside, where a group of young girls walked past wearing future tech leader shirts. This is bigger than revenge. It's real change. So why the threatening email? Because you need to let go of the past. He leaned forward. The ceremony today. Dad's not just stepping down. He's announcing a complete restructuring. The board wants to name the new headquarters after you. What? But first, he pulled out another USB drive. You need to decide. This one has proof of what the company was really like before. The discrimination, the sexism, everything. Release it, and you get your final revenge. Keep it hidden, and we keep building the future. My phone buzzed repeatedly. Messages from everyone. Mom asking about the ceremony speech. Dad sending last-minute suggestions for the transition. Damon confirming the new board appointments. Sarah sharing more videos of inspired girls. Time to choose, sis, Rodney said softly. Revenge or revolution? I stared at the two drives. Everything I'd planned. Everything I'd become. Quinn! Sarah appeared at our table, breathless. Sorry, but there's an emergency. The scholarship girls. They're all here. They want to show you something before the ceremony. In the lobby of my building, 30 young women stood waiting, each holding a laptop. As I approached, they opened them in unison, revealing a synchronized display across all screens. We wrote this together, Sarah explained. An AI program that identifies and counters gender bias in corporate communications. We call it the Quinn Protocol. It's already being adopted by major tech companies. Another girl added, your father's company will be the first to implement it fully. I felt tears forming. You did this. You showed us how, Sarah said simply. Now we're showing others. My phone buzzed one final time. Carlos, media's here for the ceremony. Everyone's waiting. I looked at Rodney, then at the drives in my hand. With a deep breath, I dropped them into the lobby's decorative fountain. Let's go change the world, I told the girls. For real this time. In the auditorium, I found my family waiting backstage. Mom was coaching the scholarship recipients. Dad was practicing his introduction. Damon was reviewing the new corporate structure with board members. Ready? Kayla asked, appearing beside me. I watched Sarah lead her team to their seats, their faces glowing with possibility. Watched Mom stand tall as reporters approached her about the foundation. Watched Dad prepare to publicly hand over his life's work to his daughter. Quinn? Rodney touched my arm. The revenge plot. Are you sure about letting it go? I smiled, thinking of all the girls who would never have to plan revenge because they'd be too busy planning their futures. Some things, I said, are more powerful than revenge. The lights dimmed. It was time to step into the spotlight, not as the daughter seeking vengeance, but as the leader showing the way forward. And that's how you change the world. I concluded my TED Talk, gesturing to the screen behind me where Sarah was demonstrating her latest AI breakthrough. The audience erupted in applause. Backstage, Mom waited with tears in her eyes. I still can't believe how far we've come. Speaking of which, Kayla interrupted, rushing over with her tablet. The Quinn Protocol just got adopted by every major tech company in Silicon Valley. It's officially industry standard now. And perfect timing, Carlos added, appearing with his usual impeccable timing. Because wait until you see tomorrow's Wall Street Journal. He handed me an advance copy. The headline read, Tech's Gender Revolution, How One Family's Transformation Sparked Global Change. Don't forget this, Dad said, joining us. He looked older but lighter somehow, like he'd finally set down a heavy burden. He handed me an envelope. Inside was a letter from a father in Seattle. My daughter showed me your story. Yesterday, I apologized to her for the first time for dismissing her dreams. Today, we're building her first robot together. We get hundreds like that now, Damon said, scrolling through his phone. The foundation can barely keep up with the applications. Quinn, Sarah burst in, her face flushed with excitement. The United Nations just confirmed. They want us to launch the Global Mentorship Program next month. I smiled, remembering the scared teenage girl I'd been, plotting revenge in her bedroom. If only she could see us now. Ms. Quinn? A small voice interrupted my thoughts. A young girl, maybe 12, stood clutching a laptop. I'm sorry to bother you, but could you look at my code? Of course. I sat down, patting the chair next to me. Show me what you've got. As she opened her laptop, I noticed my father watching us, his eyes soft. He walked over, pulled up a chair. Mind if I learn too? He asked the girl. She beamed. I'm building a program that helps kids stand up to bullies. See, it works like this. Rodney joined us, then Damon, then Mom. Soon we were all huddled around the laptop, watching this young girl explain her vision for a better world. Quinn, Carlos called softly. The press is asking about the family photo. I looked at my family, really looked at them. Mom, now a fierce advocate for women's rights. Dad, mentoring young girls in coding. Damon, revolutionizing corporate culture. Rodney, using tech to help addiction recovery. All of us, transformed. Actually, I said, let's make it bigger than family. We gathered on stage. My family, Sarah and her team. The scholarship recipients, mentors, and that brave little girl with her anti-bullying code. Hundreds of faces, all part of this revolution. Wait, the photographer said, we need a caption. I thought about the USB drives at the bottom of that fountain, about revenge transformed into revolution, about fear turned into force for change. How about the future is all of us, Sarah suggested. Perfect, I said, as cameras flashed. Later, in my office, I found one last letter on my desk. It was from my younger self. I'd written it the night I left home, full of anger and plans for revenge. Dear future me, it began. I hope you make them pay for everything they did. I picked up a pen, turned the letter over, and wrote, Dear past me, we did something better than make them pay. We made them change. And in doing so, we changed too. Your anger built a revolution. Your pain created possibility. Your revenge became redemption. You won't believe this now, but someday Dad will teach coding to young girls. Mom will fight for women's rights. Your brothers will champion change. And you'll help thousands of girls write their own stories. That's the thing about revenge. Sometimes it transforms into something more powerful. Hope. Keep coding. Keep fighting. Keep believing. Love, Quinn. A knock at my door. Sarah again. Ready? The new scholarship candidates are here. I stood up, tucked the letter into my desk. Through my office window, I could see the city skyline, dotted with buildings where women now led companies, where girls learned to code, where the future was being rewritten. Quinn? Mom called from the doorway. Your father wants to show the girls his new mentorship program. I smiled. Tell them I'm coming. We've got work to do. Because that's the thing about changing the world. It's not about revenge or redemption. It's about revolution. And revolutions, they never end. They just grow bigger, stronger, more unstoppable, just like us.
The morning of my wedding, I found my wedding dress shredded to pieces in the bridal suite. Delicate white lace lay scattered across the floor like fallen snow, and the pearl beading I'd hand-sewn was ripped apart, each tiny bead rolling away from me like tears. I stood there in my silk robe, frozen, unable to process what I was seeing. My name is Holly, and that was just the beginning of how my sister Samantha destroyed what should have been the happiest day of my life. "Oh my God, Holly!" Layla burst through the door, her bridesmaid dress swishing around her knees. "You need to see what's happening downstairs." I followed her down the grand staircase of the venue we'd spent months choosing. The whispers hit me before I saw anything else. Guests huddled in small groups, their faces a mix of shock and pity. My mother stood in the center of the room, her hand pressed against her mouth, while my father argued with someone from the catering company. "I'm so sorry, but we received a call cancelling the entire order," the caterer was saying. "It came from the bride's number." That's impossible, I said, stepping forward. I never… Holly. Brian's voice cut through the chaos. My fiancé stood by the entrance, his best man beside him. His face was ashen. We need to talk, now. He led me to a quiet corner, his hands trembling as he pulled out his phone. I've been getting these messages all morning, from different numbers, and screenshots of conversations. The screen showed dozens of texts, all containing screenshots of what looked like intimate conversations between me and my ex-boyfriend. Conversations that never happened, photos that were clearly edited, but they looked real enough to plant doubt. Tell me these aren't real, Brian whispered. Of course they're not real. Brian, you know me. I thought I did. He stepped back, running a hand through his hair. But then Samantha showed me. My blood ran cold. Samantha, what does my sister have to do with this? She came to me this morning, Holly. Said she couldn't keep quiet anymore. Showed me evidence of you, meeting him, planning to leave me after getting access to my accounts. The pieces started falling into place. The shredded dress, the cancelled catering, the perfectly timed revelation of fake messages, all orchestrated by my own sister. Where is she? I demanded, scanning the room. But Samantha was nowhere to be seen. Holly, Layla appeared at my side, her phone in hand. It's worse. Someone's posted all these accusations online. They're going viral in our social circle. The room started spinning. 200 guests, our families, friends, colleagues, all witness to this humiliation, all believing these lies. Brian, please, I reached for his hand. You know this isn't true. We've been together for 3 years. You know me. He pulled away, his eyes full of doubt. I need time to think. I'm sorry, Holly, I can't do this today. I watched him walk away, his best man following close behind. The whispers grew louder. Phone cameras pointed in my direction. My mother approached, tears streaming down her face. Why didn't you tell me you were having doubts? She asked, her voice breaking. Mom, this is all fake. Can't you see? Samantha did this. Don't blame your sister, she sighed. She's only trying to protect the family from scandal. That's when I saw her. Samantha stood at the top of the stairs, wearing a concerned expression that didn't quite reach her eyes. Our gazes met, and for a split second, her mask slipped. The corner of her mouth twitched into a smirk before she quickly covered it with her hand. I think we should start asking guests to leave, my father announced, his voice heavy with disappointment. I stood in the middle of the chaos, watching my perfect day crumble around me. Years of planning, destroyed in hours. My relationship, shattered by carefully crafted lies. My reputation, in tatters. Layla squeezed my hand. What do you want to do? I took a deep breath, straightening my spine. Through the tears threatening to fall, I looked up at Samantha one more time. She thought she'd broken me. She thought this was her moment of triumph. I want everyone out, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. And then I want to start planning. Planning what? I turned to my best friend, a new resolve burning in my chest. My comeback. Samantha thinks she's won, but she has no idea what she just started. This isn't over. Not by a long shot. 3 months after my ruined wedding, I sat across from Layla at our favorite coffee shop, spreading out business cards and brochures across the small table. You're really serious about this wedding planning thing? Layla stirred her latte, eyeing the materials skeptically. Most people would avoid anything wedding-related after what happened. Most people haven't had their sister destroy their wedding in spectacular fashion. I tapped one of the business cards. Look, I already have my first client booked. Through your mother's friend, Layla pointed out. Are you sure you're ready? The bell above the shop door chimed, and I instinctively ducked my head. Ever since that day, I'd developed a habit of avoiding eye contact in public places. The whispers had finally started to die down, but the humiliation still lingered. I have to be ready, I said, straightening up. I can't hide forever. Besides, who better to plan a wedding than someone who knows exactly how one can go wrong? Layla's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and grimaced. Speaking of wrong, Samantha just posted another vacation photo with Tyler. They look disgustingly happy. Delete her from your social media, I said firmly. I did it the day after the wedding. Your mum keeps asking when you'll talk to her again. I gathered my papers into a neat pile. Maybe when hell freezes over, or when she admits what she did, whichever comes first. The next morning, I stood in front of my first clients, a young couple who'd been engaged for 6 months. The bride, Jessica, clutched a wedding magazine while her fiancé, Marcus, looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. So, I began, tell me about your dream wedding. Well, Jessica leaned forward. I want something unique. Everyone does beach weddings or garden parties. I want people to remember our day. I fought back a bitter laugh. Trust me, I know all about memorable weddings. Oh, Jessica's eyes widened. Weren't you the one who now runs the most detail-oriented wedding planning service in the city? I cut in smoothly. Yes, that's me. And I can guarantee that every aspect of your wedding will be triple-checked and secured. 2 hours later, I had my first contract signed. As I walked to my car, my phone rang. It was Brian. My heart stuttered. We hadn't spoken since that day. Hello? My voice came out steadier than I felt. Holly? He sounded tired. I've been doing a lot of thinking about everything that happened. I leaned against my car, legs suddenly weak. And? I should have trusted you, should have known better than to believe those messages. I've been looking into it, and there's evidence they were manipulated. I tried to tell you that 3 months ago. I know. He paused. I miss you, Holly. The words I'd dreamed of hearing for months, but instead of joy, I felt something else. Strength. I'm sorry, Brian, but I can't go backward. You didn't trust me when it mattered most. I'm building something new now. That evening, I met with Layla at her apartment. She opened the door to find me grinning. Okay, what happened? You look like you just won the lottery. I flopped onto her couch. I signed my first clients and turned down Brian when he called to reconcile. He called. Layla sat down hard. What did he say? That he should have trusted me. But you know what? In a weird way, I'm grateful for what happened. It showed me who really had my back. Layla handed me a glass of wine. Speaking of having your back, your mom called me. Samantha's engaged to Tyler. The wine glass froze halfway to my lips. Already? The wedding's in a year. Your mom wants you to be there. I set the glass down carefully. Of course she does, because heaven forbid we don't pretend to be one big happy family. Are you going to go? I stood up and walked to Layla's window, looking out at the city lights. Below, a wedding party spilled out of a restaurant, their laughter floating up to us. The bride's white dress glowed under the streetlights. You know what? I turned back to Layla. I think I will, but not as the bitter, betrayed sister. I'm going to go as the best damn wedding planner this city has ever seen. By then, everyone will know my name for the right reasons. Layla raised her eyebrows. That's either the healthiest or most terrifying response you could have given. I picked up my wine glass and smiled. Why not both? To new beginnings. To new beginnings, Layla echoed, and to karma being a patient friend. Remember when Samantha cut up your favorite dress before your 8th grade dance? Layla asked, helping me sort through old family photos. God, the pattern's been there all along. I picked up a photo of Samantha and me at that dance. Me in a hastily borrowed dress, her beaming in a designer gown. Mom always said I was being dramatic when I blamed her. Speaking of your mom, Layla held up her phone, showing me a text. She wants us both over for dinner tonight, says it's important. 6 hours later, we pulled up to my childhood home. Through the window, I could see my mother arranging flowers in the dining room. Her nervous habit. We can still leave, Layla offered. No, let's get this over with. Inside, my mother hugged me too tightly. Holly, sweetheart, and Layla, thank you both for coming. What's so important, Mom? She fidgeted with her necklace. Well, I thought we should talk about Samantha's engagement party next month. She wants you to... No. I cut her off. Whatever it is, no. She wants you to be her maid of honor. The room went silent. Even the old grandfather clock seemed to hold its breath. Are you kidding me? I laughed, but it came out harsh. After what she did? Holly, she's your sister. She feels terrible about your wedding, but... Feels terrible? Has she admitted what she did? Has she apologized? Mom's face crumpled. She says there's nothing to admit, that you're imagining things. Classic, Layla muttered. The doorbell rang, making us all jump. Mom's eyes widened. Oh, I should mention, Samantha and Tyler are joining us. Before I could react, I heard the front door open and Samantha's voice floating in. Mom, sorry we're late. She appeared in the doorway, Tyler behind her. She wore an expensive-looking dress and a massive engagement ring that caught the light like a disco ball. Holly! She rushed forward as if to hug me. I stepped back. Don't. Tyler shifted uncomfortably. Maybe we should give them space. No need, Samantha said brightly. Holly's just being dramatic, as usual. Dramatic? I felt my control slipping. Was I being dramatic when you destroyed my wedding dress? When you faked those messages? See, Samantha turned to our mother. She's still making up stories. Holly, I know you were stressed about the wedding, but blaming me for your cold feet is... Shut up. The words came out quiet but sharp. Just shut up. Girls, Mom pleaded, please. Can't we move past this? Samantha wants you in her wedding party, Holly. It's a chance to heal. A chance to what? I stood up. A chance for her to humiliate me again. To finish what she started. Holly, Tyler stepped forward. I know things are tense, but Samantha's told me how much she misses you. I looked at him. Really looked at him. He seemed genuine, kind even. Just like Brian had been. Tyler, has she told you what really happened at my wedding? Samantha's smile flickered. There's nothing to tell. Holly got cold feet and my phone buzzed. A text from Brian. We need to talk. It's about Samantha. I have proof. I showed the message to Layla, whose eyes widened. Well, I said, gathering my things. This has been enlightening. Mom, I'm sorry, but I won't be in Samantha's wedding party. I won't be at her wedding at all. You're just jealous, Samantha snapped, her perfect mask cracking. You can't stand that I'm happy, that I'm getting married when your wedding fell apart. I turned to her slowly. No, Samantha, I'm not jealous. I'm successful. I'm healing. And I'm done letting you gaslight me. Holly, Tyler called as I reached the door. Whatever happened between you two, can't you forgive her? For the family's sake. I looked back at my sister, at her expensive dress and her perfect makeup, and her carefully constructed lies. Some things don't deserve forgiveness, Tyler. Some things need consequences. Outside, Layla grabbed my arm. What did Brian say he has proof of? I showed her the rest of the message. Found the person who helped her fake those screenshots. They're willing to talk. Holy shit, Layla breathed. What are you going to do? I watched through the window as Samantha comforted our crying mother, playing the role of the wounded, misunderstood sister perfectly. I'm going to wait, I said. Let her plan her perfect wedding. Let her think she's won. And then we'll see who's being dramatic. And that's how we saved the Anderson wedding after the venue flooded, I concluded, watching the young couple across my desk exchange impressed glances. No crisis is too big when you're prepared. My phone buzzed. Another 5-star review posted online. In 6 months, I'd become the city's go-to wedding planner for crisis management. Ironic, considering my own wedding disaster. After the clients left, Sawyer poked his head into my office. As one of the few mutual friends who'd stayed neutral during the fallout with Samantha, he'd recently started referring clients to me. Hey, got a minute? He closed the door behind him. There's something you should know about Samantha's engagement. I gestured to the chair. I'm listening. Tyler's ex-girlfriend reached out to me, says Samantha started pursuing him while they were still together, used some familiar tactics. My stomach dropped. What kind of tactics? Fake messages, edited photos. Sound familiar? Before I could respond, my phone rang. Brian's name flashed on the screen. Sorry, I need to take this. I waited until Sawyer left. Brian? I met with the guy, he said without preamble. The one who helped Samantha fake those messages. He kept receipts, Holly. Everything. I gripped the edge of my desk. Why is he coming forward now? Apparently, she never paid him the full amount she promised. He's bitter. A knock at my door interrupted us. Layla entered, waving an envelope. You got your official invitation to the wedding of the year, she said sarcastically. I'll call you back, I told Brian. Layla handed me the cream-colored envelope. Inside was an elaborate invitation with gold foil details. Classic Samantha, always having to outdo everyone. Are you going to RSVP? Layla asked. My phone pinged with a text from Sawyer. Tyler's ex wants to meet, says there's more you should know. Yes, I said, reaching for my phone. I think I will. 2 days later, I sat across from Maria, Tyler's ex, in a quiet cafe. She looked nervous, stirring her coffee without drinking it. I thought I was crazy, she said. The messages seemed so real. Tyler swore he never sent them, but there they were, time-stamped and everything. Then I saw what happened at your wedding, and it clicked. Did you tell Tyler? She shook her head. He wouldn't believe me. Samantha had already convinced him I was unstable, jealous. Sound familiar? My phone lit up with another text from Brian. Meeting set with the tech guy tomorrow. You should be there. Holly, Maria leaned forward. There's something else. The timing of their engagement. It's not what everyone thinks. What do you mean? They got engaged the week before your wedding. Samantha made Tyler keep it secret, said she didn't want to steal your thunder. I felt the blood drain from my face. She was engaged. When she destroyed my wedding, she wanted both spotlights, yours and hers, but she couldn't handle sharing the attention. Back at my office, I found Layla waiting with lunch. You look like you've seen a ghost, she said, handing me a sandwich. More like I've seen the truth. I filled her in on Maria's revelation. That's sick, Layla muttered. So what's your plan? I pulled out Samantha's wedding invitation. First, I'm going to RSVP yes. Then I'm meeting with Brian and this tech guy tomorrow. And then I'm going to plan the perfect wedding gift for my dear sister. My phone rang, Samantha's number. I put it on speaker. Holly, you RSVP'd yes. Mum's going to be so happy. Wouldn't miss it for the world, I said sweetly. I know we've had our differences, but this means so much to me. Maybe you could even help with some of the planning. You're so good at it now. I caught Layla's eye. She was making gagging motions. Actually, I said, I'd love to help. I've learned so much about what can go wrong at weddings and how to prevent it. Perfect. Let's have lunch tomorrow. Just us sisters. Sorry, I have an important meeting tomorrow, but soon. After hanging up, Layla stared at me. You're playing with fire. I picked up the invitation, running my finger over the embossed date. No, I'm playing her game, and this time I know all the rules. My phone buzzed again, a text from Maria. Found the original messages, the ones she deleted. Still want to see them? Yes, I typed back. Every single one. The pieces were falling into place. Samantha wanted a perfect wedding. I'd make sure she got exactly what she deserved. The tech guy, who introduced himself only as Jake, spread printouts across the coffee shop table. Brian sat beside me, his jaw clenching as he reviewed the evidence. These are the original message logs, Jake explained, pointing to timestamps. See how they don't match the screenshots Samantha distributed? That's because she used software to create fake conversations and backdate them. And you helped her do this? I asked. Jake shifted uncomfortably. She paid well. Or was supposed to. Said it was just a prank between sisters. Some prank, Brian muttered. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. Samantha's trying on wedding dresses today. Please come. She misses you. There's more, Jake said, pulling out his laptop. The email she sent to your caterers and vendors, cancelling services. I tracked the IP addresses, all from her home computer. Can you prove it was her specifically? Brian asked. Better, I have the original emails she sent me asking how to do it. A new message popped up, this time from Maria. Found something interesting about Tyler's company. Your sister's been busy. Before I could respond, the coffee shop door chimed. I looked up to see my mother walking in. Holly, I thought that was your car outside. She spotted Brian and froze. Oh, I didn't realize. Jake quickly gathered his papers. I'll email you everything, he whispered before slipping away. Mom, I stood up. What are you doing here? Looking for you. The bridal shop is just down the street. Samantha's trying on dresses and... I'm in a meeting. I cut her off, gesturing to Brian. Mom's eyes narrowed. Are you two? No, Brian said firmly. We're dealing with something else. Something about your other daughter. What's that supposed to mean? I pulled out one of Jake's printouts. Maybe you should see this, Mom. Remember how you never believed me about Samantha? She took the paper hesitantly. I watched her face change as she read. Confusion, shock, denial, and finally, devastating realization. This can't be real, she whispered. It is. And there's more, so much more. Mum sank into a chair. Why would she do this? Because she's always been jealous, Brian said. Because she couldn't stand Holly being happy. My phone buzzed again. Maria had sent a document, financial records showing suspicious transfers from Tyler's company accounts, all traced back to Samantha. Mom, I said gently, there's something else you should know, about when Samantha really got engaged. 20 minutes later, my mother sat in stunned silence, tears rolling down her cheeks. All these years, she said finally, all the times you tried to tell me, I always defended her. You wanted to believe the best about your daughter. I have 2 daughters, she said sharply, and I failed to protect one of them. My phone lit up with a call from Sawyer. Holly, we have a problem. Samantha knows you're gathering evidence. She's trying to get ahead of the story. How? She's telling people you're having a breakdown, that you're obsessed with ruining her wedding because you're jealous. She's even talked to some of your clients. I felt the blood drain from my face. My clients? Check your business email. I pulled out my laptop, opened my inbox, and felt my stomach drop. 3 cancellations, all citing concerns about recent revelations. She's trying to destroy my business, I said numbly. Mom stood up suddenly. No, not this time. I'm going to that bridal shop right now. Mom, wait. I've waited long enough. It's time I stopped enabling her and started being a mother to both my daughters. After she left, Brian touched my hand. What are you going to do? I opened Maria's document about Tyler's company. I'm going to make sure the truth comes out. All of it. My phone buzzed one final time. A message from Samantha herself. Heard you've been asking questions, little sister. Remember what happened last time you tried to stand up to me? Back off, or your business won't be the only thing you lose. I showed the message to Brian. His face hardened. She's threatening you now? No, I said, standing up. She's making her last mistake. She thinks she can still control the narrative, but she forgot something important. What's that? I gathered the evidence, a plan forming in my mind. I plan weddings for a living now. I know how to create moments people never forget. I texted Layla, get ready. It's time to plan Samantha's perfect day, every last detail. Her response came instantly. Should I be scared or excited? Both, I wrote back, definitely both. She did what? I stared at my mother across her kitchen table, coffee forgotten between us. Threw a complete tantrum at the bridal shop, Mom said, rubbing her temples. When I confronted her about the evidence, she knocked over 3 wedding dresses and accused me of always loving you more. Classic deflection, Layla muttered from her spot by the counter. Tyler was there, Mom continued. He looked confused, started asking questions about what evidence we were talking about. My phone buzzed, another client cancellation. That made 5 now. She's systematically destroying everything I've built, I said, showing Mom the email. just like she did with my wedding. The doorbell rang. Mum went to answer it, returning with Tyler behind her. "Holly," he said, looking uncomfortable. "Can we talk?" Layla straightened. "I'll stay." "It's okay," I told her. "Give us a minute." Once we were alone, Tyler paced the kitchen. "Samantha's been crying all night, says you're trying to ruin her wedding because you're jealous. But then your mum mentioned evidence, and Maria called me." "What did Maria tell you?" "That Samantha broke us up. That she used the same tactics she allegedly used at your wedding." He ran a hand through his hair. "I don't know what to believe." I pulled out my phone, opened the folder with Jake's evidence. Believe this, 20 minutes later, Tyler sat with his head in his hands. "The company accounts. I gave her access because she said she wanted to learn about finance. I trusted her. We all did." "But why? Why would she do all this?" "Because she can't stand anyone else being happy," Mum said from the doorway. We hadn't heard her return. "Because I spoiled her and excused her behavior until she became someone I don't recognize." Tyler's phone started ringing, Samantha's photo lighting up the screen. He declined the call. "The wedding's in 3 days," he said quietly. "I know. She's got everything planned perfectly. 300 guests, press coverage. She's been talking about it being the wedding of the year for months." Mom sat down heavily. "Tyler, what are you going to do?" Before he could answer, the front door burst open. Samantha stormed in, mascara streaked down her face. "You," she pointed at me. "You're poisoning everyone against me. First Mom, now Tyler." "No one's poisoning anyone," Tyler said. "We're just finally seeing the truth." "Truth?" She laughed hysterically. "The truth is, my sister's always been jealous of me. She can't stand that I'm getting the perfect wedding she couldn't have." "The wedding you made sure I couldn't have," I corrected quietly. "You have no proof." "Actually," Tyler held up his phone, "she has quite a lot of proof, including what you did with my company's money." Samantha's face went white. "I can explain." "Save it," Mom cut in. "I've spent years making excuses for you, Samantha. No more." "You're all against me." Samantha's voice rose to a shriek. "But the wedding's still happening. Everything's paid for. Everything's arranged. You can't stop it." "No one's trying to stop your wedding," I said, standing up. "In fact, I want it to happen exactly as planned." Something in my tone made her pause. "What does that mean?" "It means you're going to get the perfect wedding you deserve." "Are you threatening me?" "No, I'm promising you something. You wanted all the attention. You'll get it. You wanted a memorable day. It will be unforgettable." Tyler stood up. "I need time to think about everything." "Tyler, please." Samantha grabbed his arm. "Don't listen to them. Remember all our plans, our future." "Our future built on lies?" He gently removed her hand. "I'll see you tomorrow. Maybe." After Tyler left, Samantha turned to me, her mask completely gone. "You think you've won? I still have the upper hand. Your business is falling apart. Your reputation—" "My reputation will recover," I interrupted. "The truth has a way of doing that. The question is, will yours?" She stormed out, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. Mom sank into a chair. "What happens now?" I picked up my phone, opened my messages. Dozens of people, Jake, Maria, Brian, Sawyer, former clients Samantha had lied to, all waiting for my signal. "Now," I said, "we get ready for a wedding." "Holly," Mum's voice was worried, "what are you planning?" I thought about all the years of Samantha's manipulations, all the lives she'd damaged, all the pain she'd caused. "Justice, Mom. I'm planning justice." The grand ballroom buzzed with 300 of the city's elite. Samantha had spared no expense: crystal chandeliers, ice sculptures, and enough flowers to fill a greenhouse. She stood at the center of it all in her designer gown, basking in the attention. Tyler hadn't called off the wedding. "Are you ready?" Layla whispered, adjusting my bridesmaid's dress. Yes, I'd accepted the role, much to everyone's surprise, especially Samantha's. "Everything's in place," I murmured back. "Jake, She nodded toward the tech booth. Ready with the video system. Maria? Third row with the evidence files. Brian? By the bar with Tyler's company records. The wedding planner, not me, obviously, began herding people to their seats. Samantha caught my eye and smirked, probably thinking she'd won by having me stand here in her wedding party, diminished and defeated. The ceremony began. I watched Tyler's face as Samantha recited her vows, wondering if he could hear the insincerity in her voice. When the officiant asked if anyone objected, I stayed silent. That wasn't part of the plan. During the reception, the MC announced it was time for the speeches. Samantha had strategically placed mine last, probably expecting me to embarrass myself. I approached the microphone, champagne glass in hand. The room fell silent. For those who don't know me, I'm Holly, Samantha's sister. I smiled at the crowd. And I'm a wedding planner. Samantha's smile flickered. In fact, I specialize in crisis management, making sure nothing goes wrong on the perfect day, making sure no one can sabotage a wedding. The room shifted uncomfortably. People knew about my failed wedding, but no one ever spoke of it. Samantha taught me that skill, actually. She showed me exactly how a wedding could be destroyed. The fake messages, the cancelled vendors, the orchestrated humiliation. Holly, Samantha warned from her seat. But today isn't about my wedding. It's about truth, about consequences. I nodded to Jake. The ballroom screens lit up with evidence, time-stamped messages showing Samantha's manipulation, financial records from Tyler's company, testimonies from people she'd hurt. No. Samantha lunged for the tech booth, but Brian was faster, blocking her path. Tyler, I continued, did you know Samantha was engaged to you when she destroyed my wedding? That she delayed announcing it so she could steal both moments? Tyler stood up slowly, his face ashen. Is this true? Of course not, Samantha shrieked. She's lying. Actually, my mother's voice rang out as she stood. We have proof of everything. Maria stepped forward, holding up her phone. Including what she did to me, Tyler. The same pattern, the same manipulation. The crowd murmured. Phones came out, recording everything. You want to talk about patterns? I continued. Let's talk about childhood. Every time I achieved something, something mysterious would happen to ruin it. My 8th grade dance dress. Destroyed. My college acceptance letter. Mysteriously lost until after the deadline. Stop it, Samantha whispered, but her voice had lost its power. But your biggest mistake? I turned to face her directly. Was threatening my business, because that gave me nothing left to lose. The screens now showed her recent messages to my clients, the orchestrated campaign to destroy my reputation. You see, I addressed the crowd, my sister wanted a memorable wedding, one people would talk about forever. Congratulations, Samantha. You got your wish. Tyler stood up. The company money? How much did you take? Tyler, please. Samantha reached for him, but he stepped back. I can't. He looked around the silent room, at the evidence still playing on the screens, at his bride's crumbling facade. I can't do this. He walked out. The crowd erupted in whispers. Samantha lunged at me, but security, which I'd quietly arranged, intercepted her. You ruined everything, she screamed. No, I said calmly. You did that all by yourself. I just made sure everyone saw the truth. Our mother approached, tears streaming down her face. Samantha, how could you? Mom, don't you see? She's always been your favorite. I just wanted... To hurt people? Mom shook her head. To destroy lives. That's not what I raised you to be. The guests began filing out, phones still recording, whispers growing louder. Samantha's perfect wedding had become exactly what she'd feared, a public humiliation. Holly, Layla touched my arm. We should go. I looked at my sister one last time. She stood alone in her expensive dress, mascara running, the remnants of her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. Karma's not a punishment, Samantha, I said softly. It's a teacher. I hope you learn from this. As we left, I heard her collapse into sobs. But this time, there was no satisfaction in her tears, Only a quiet sense of justice finally served. The morning sun streamed through my office windows as I reviewed the day's appointments. My phone buzzed with a text from Tyler. "Meeting with the lawyers today. Thanks for helping build the case." A knock at my door made me look up. My mother stood there, holding 2 coffee cups. "Thought you might need this," she said, setting one down. "Big day, 3 consultations and a venue walk through." I gestured to the chair. "How's the house hunting going?" "Found a nice condo downtown, smaller, but—" She trailed off, and I knew she was thinking about the empty rooms in our family home since Samantha had left town. "Have you heard from her?" Mum nodded slowly. "She's in therapy. Actually therapy this time, not just saying she is. Her therapist reached out, wants to arrange a supervised conversation." "And?" I said yes, but I told them you get to decide if and when you're ready. Another knock. Layla poked her head in. "Your 9 o'clock is here." "Oh, hi, Mrs. G." "I'll let you work," Mum stood, then hesitated. "Holly, I'm sorry I didn't believe you all those years. I was so focused on keeping the peace that I didn't see the damage being done." "Mom." "No, let me finish. Watching you handle everything with such grace, even during the wedding. I've never been prouder." After she left, Layla helped me prepare for the consultation. "Speaking of the wedding, have you seen the industry newsletter? Your business is booming since the story got out." "Turns out being known for exposing wedding sabotage is good for business." I smiled wryly. "Who knew?" My phone buzzed again. Brian this time. "Coffee later. Need your advice about something." Before I could respond, my clients arrived, a young couple with familiar anxiety in their eyes. "We heard about what happened at your sister's wedding," the bride said immediately. "That's why we chose you. We need someone who can spot trouble before it happens." "That's exactly what we do here," I assured them. "Tell me about your vision." As they described their plans, I noticed a small package on my desk that hadn't been there before. The return address made my heart skip. It was from Samantha. After the clients left, I opened it carefully. Inside was a small box and a letter. "Dear Holly, my therapist says I should write to you, but words feel inadequate. I've spent weeks trying to understand why I did what I did. The jealousy, the need to win, the constant competition. It was all my own insecurity. I couldn't stand seeing you happy because I'd never learned how to be happy myself. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I am asking for a chance to show you who I'm trying to become." Inside the box is Mom's old charm bracelet, the one we used to fight over as kids. "You should have it. You were always the stronger one." Samantha. The bracelet sparkled in the morning light, each charm holding a memory from our childhood. Before the competition, before the hurt. Layla found me staring at it. "You okay?" "I think I am." I slipped the bracelet into my drawer. "Ready for the venue walkthrough?" "Actually," she grinned, "there's someone here to see you first." Brian walked in, looking nervous but determined. "Sorry to drop by unannounced." "I thought we were meeting for coffee later." "We were, but—" He pulled out a small velvet box. I couldn't wait. My heart stopped. "Brian, before you say anything, I know we have history. I know I failed you once. But watching you handle everything with such strength and dignity, I fell in love with you all over again. This time, I know exactly who you are." He opened the box, revealing a simple but elegant ring. "I don't need a big wedding, I just need you." I looked at Layla, who was filming everything on her phone, tears streaming down her face. At my mother, who had reappeared in the doorway. At the bracelet in my drawer, a reminder of how far I'd come. "Yes," I said simply, "but on one condition." "Anything." "We elope." He laughed, sliding the ring onto my finger. "Deal." My phone buzzed one final time, a text from my mother to our family group chat, which still included Samantha. "Family therapy session next week. Holly, no pressure, but there's a seat for you if you want it." I looked at the ring on my finger, at Brian's hopeful face, at the successful business I'd built from the ashes of betrayal. "Tell them I'll be there," I typed back. "Some things are worth rebuilding."
"John, what are you doing here?" My voice quivered, betraying my shock. "Vanessa, still slumming it, I see. Couldn't carve out a better life, huh?" John replied, his smirk slicing through my uneasy calm. Standing in the middle of the outlet mall's chaotic maze of sales racks and oblivious shoppers, I felt time collapse around me. John Harris, my ex-husband, my mistake, my ghost, stood before me, as handsome and confident as ever. The years hadn't dulled his arrogance. "It's been a long time," I said, summoning every ounce of composure I had left. Seeing him here, of all places, threw me off balance. I wasn't prepared for this confrontation, not at all. 15 years, he corrected, eyes narrowing. "And I see you've taken a liking to bargain shopping." His words dripped with disdain. "Guess that new husband of yours isn't making enough to spare you from the discount bin." My blood boiled, but I masked it with a forced smile. "At least I have someone who doesn't walk out when things get tough." He raised an eyebrow, smirk fading momentarily. "Tough? No, just unbearable," he snapped back. "But look at you now, a little family of your own. Amazing how things change when you're not holding anyone back." Before I could respond, Greg's voice cut through the tension, warm and reassuring. "Hey, Van, Ethan wants to know if we can grab ice cream after this." John's demeanor shifted. Gone was the snide tone and superior attitude. He turned, visibly taken aback by the sight of Greg and our children. I could see him recalibrate, eyes flicking to Ethan and Lily, assessing. "Everything all right, honey?" Greg asked, eyes flicking to John. "Oh, it's just an old acquaintance," I said, hoping the lie wasn't too obvious. "Greg Carter," Greg said, extending his hand. "Vanessa's husband." John hesitated for a split second before shaking Greg's hand. "John Harris," he mumbled. His eyes then landed on Lily and Ethan. "Your kids?" "Yes, this is Lily," I said, patting my daughter on the shoulder. "And Ethan." Ethan looked up curiously at John, innocence radiating from him. "Hi, mister." John's face softened in a way I hadn't seen before, almost wistful. Then, with a sharp inhale, he collected himself. "Nice to meet you all, and this is Oliver, my son." He gestured towards a boy waiting nearby. The resemblance to John was uncanny, but also there was something off, something gnawing at my intuition. "Hi, Oliver," Greg greeted kindly. Oliver pulled a polite smile. Vanessa, sensing the strained silence, interjected, "We should get going. Kids, say goodbye." As we walked away, I couldn't help but glance back. John stood there, a ghost from my past who somehow still held strings to my present. The chance encounter had rattled me more than I cared to admit. In the car, I took a deep breath. "Are you okay?" Greg asked softly. I nodded, but my mind raced. The sight of John after all these years, his spiteful words, and then the eeriness of his new family, it left me uneasy, like something darker lurked beneath the surface. This would not be the last time I saw John Harris. And with each encounter, old wounds would reopen, and new mysteries would unfold. Even now, a nagging feeling told me that today was just the beginning of something that could change everything. Little did I know, I was right. The drive home was quiet, too quiet. Greg, always quick to sense when something was off, finally broke the silence. "You want to talk about it?" I sighed, staring out the window at the passing scenery. "That was John Harris," I admitted. Greg's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "Your ex?" "Yeah," I mumbled, feeling the words stick in my throat. It brought back a lot of bad memories. "Mom, who was that man?" Lily asked from the back seat, her innocent curiosity piercing through the tension. "Just someone from my past, sweetie." I forced a smile, trying to mask the unease spreading through me. "Nothing you need to worry about." When we got home, Greg wrapped his arms around me, pulling me close. "We've built a good life, Van. Don't let him drag you back into the past." I nodded, but his words were cold comfort. The encounter with John hung over me like a dark cloud. I needed to focus on what I had now: Greg, Lily, Ethan. That night, after the kids went to bed, I lay next to Greg in the dark, memories of the past washing over me. John leaving abruptly, his cutting words about my inability to have children, echoing in my mind. 15 years ago, John had shattered my world. We were struggling with infertility treatments, each failed attempt driving a wedge between us. One day he just packed his bags and left, as if 10 years of marriage meant nothing. The next morning, as I sipped my coffee, Greg joined me. "You seem far away," he observed gently. "Just thinking about everything," I replied. Seeing John stirred up a lot. I paused, the memory of John's son, Oliver, flashing in my mind. There was something about him, something I couldn't shake. You know, it's okay to feel uneasy, Greg said, placing a comforting hand over mine. But remember, whatever happens, we face it together. Later that day, I picked up Lily and Ethan from school. As they chatted about their day, I couldn't help but notice Oliver at the gate, waiting for his ride. His resemblance to John was undeniable, but there was something more. "Mom, can Oliver come over for a play date?" Ethan asked, bringing me back to the moment. "Maybe someday, honey," I replied, my gaze still fixed on Oliver. Back home, I busied myself with chores, but my mind kept drifting back to John's cruel words and Hannah's apparent betrayal. How could someone so vile still have such a hold on me? Greg noticed my distraction. "Van, you're doing it again," he said softly. "Doing what?" "Letting John get to you," he replied, lifting my chin so I met his eyes. "That man doesn't deserve another second of your thoughts." He was right. I needed to focus on my family, on the present, but the nagging feeling wouldn't leave me. John's sudden appearance, those pointed remarks, it all felt like a warning, a sign that the past wasn't done with me yet. I decided that evening as I tucked Lily and Ethan into bed that I couldn't let John's reappearance unsettle our lives. But the questions lingered. What had really happened with John after he left? What secrets was he hiding now? Greg kissed me goodnight, his unwavering support a beacon in my stormy thoughts. "We'll get through this, Van, just like we always have." As I drifted to sleep, I resolved to uncover the truth about John's new life. Whatever it took, I owed it to myself and my family to finally put the past to rest. I decided to take Lily and Ethan to the park over the weekend. Greg joined us as we tried to enjoy a peaceful family day. It worked for the most part, but every now and then my mind wandered back to John and his biting remarks. As the kids played on the swings, Greg squeezed my hand. "You're thinking about him again, aren't you?" I sighed. "I can't help it, Greg. There's something that just doesn't sit right." Just then, we heard an all-too-familiar voice. "Fancy seeing you here, Vanessa." I turned to see John, his smirk ever present. His new wife, Hannah, stood beside him, looking impeccable, but holding an air of coldness. "John," I acknowledged stiffly. "Hannah. Enjoying family time?" John scoffed, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "It's cute, really." Hannah sized me up with a glance. "I see you've moved on quickly after him." "Yes, I have a wonderful family now," I said firmly, hoping to end the conversation. Oliver, playing nearby, ran over to join Ethan on the swings. Yet I couldn't help but notice Hannah keeping a close watch on him, almost protectively. John's gaze landed on Greg. "You must have a lot of patience to deal with her," he sneered. "Actually, Vanessa is amazing," Greg retorted, his voice calm. "I'm the lucky one here." John barked a laugh. "Amazing, right? Too bad she was barren and old for me." Greg shot up from the bench. "Watch your mouth, Harris." Hannah put a hand on John's arm, trying to pull him back. "John, not here." But John shrugged her off, stepping closer to us. "Why should I? Vanessa needs to hear the truth. She failed as a wife, and she knows it." The anger in Greg's eyes matched the fury rising in my chest. "That's enough," I said, my voice low but steady. "We're not your punching bags anymore." As if on cue, Ethan ran over, followed by Oliver. "Mom, can Oliver come to our house sometime?" Before I could respond, Hannah interjected. "I don't think that's a good idea, Oliver." John glared at her, then back at me. "Yes, Oliver. Wouldn't want him around your bad influence, Vanessa." "Enough!" I shouted, startling everyone, including myself. "This petty need to belittle me in front of my family. It's pathetic, John." Greg stepped between us, facing John. "You heard her. Stay away from us." John's eyes glinted with a twisted sort of satisfaction. He relished getting under my skin. Hannah pulled John away finally, giving me one last disdainful look. "Keep your distance," she warned. As they walked away, I felt Greg's arms around me, grounding me. "We won't let him get to us," he whispered. "I promise." "But he did get to us," I said quietly, watching Oliver look back at us curiously. There was more to John's life now, more I needed to uncover. His smugness, his nasty comments, they were hiding something. Back home, I shared my thoughts with Greg as we sat on the porch. John's changed, but not for the better. Something's not right in his world. Greg nodded. "Then we find out what it is. We do it together." In that moment, I knew there was no turning back. John's vile nature and the mysterious family dynamic gnawed at me. I needed to discover the truth, not just for me, but for my family's peace. Whatever secrets John was hiding, I would uncover them, with or without his permission. The days after our park encounter passed in a blur. My mind kept drifting back to the final, miserable days of my marriage to John. The memory of endless infertility treatments dominated my thoughts, each failed attempt pulling us further apart until John eventually snapped. "Vanessa," he had said back then, his voice cold and distant, "I can't do this anymore. I need more from life than this endless cycle of disappointment." "But we can adopt," I had pleaded, tears streaming down my face. "We can still have a family." He had just shaken his head, packing his bags. "You're barren and old, Vanessa. You can't give me what I need. I am done." Now, 15 years later, I leaned on the kitchen counter, staring blankly into my coffee cup. Greg noticed me zoning out again and slid beside me, gently rubbing my back. "Today's the day, you know." "Day for what?" "For focusing on our current life. I thought maybe a picnic at the lake would be good." I nodded, trying to push the past away. "Sounds great." Greg, Lily, Ethan, and I packed up and drove to the lake, our temporary escape. The kids ran ahead, laughing and playing, while we spread out the blanket and picnic basket. As I watched my children, I felt a sense of peace. Greg sat down beside me, handing me a sandwich. "Remember, we're here now. This is what matters." I smiled, grateful for his support. My thoughts, however, kept creeping back to John's haunting words and Oliver's eerie resemblance to his mother, Hannah. After lunch, while the kids skipped stones along the water, I turned to Greg. "You know, I can't help but think there's something more going on with John." Greg sighed, clearly aware I wasn't going to let this rest. "If it's really bothering you, maybe it's time we dig a little deeper. But do it carefully, Van. The last thing we need is more drama." I nodded, relieved to have his support. "Yeah, carefully." Over the next few weeks, I started piecing things together, reaching out to old contacts discreetly. Conversations with mutual acquaintances revealed John's troubled financial history and erratic behavior. Hannah's pristine social media posts painted a different picture. Her life seemed too perfect, too curated. One afternoon, as I was picking up the kids from school, I saw John's car parked outside. He was talking to Oliver, his expression tense. I caught snippets of their conversation. "I told you to stay away from them," John snapped. "But Dad, Ethan's my friend," Oliver protested, looking confused. "You don't need friends like them," John hissed, eyes darting around as if afraid someone might overhear. "John," I called out, walking towards them, "is there a problem?" John's face twisted with anger. "Stay out of this, Vanessa. Why do you always have to be so mean?" Oliver shot back at his father before running off towards the school gate, tears in his eyes. "Nice parenting," I scoffed. "Back off, Vanessa. My family's none of your business," he spat. I looked him square in the eye. "When you drag my family into your mess, it becomes my business." John stormed off, leaving me with a growing sense of unease. Clearly, things weren't as perfect in his new life as he wanted everyone to believe. But what was he hiding? That evening, I confided in Greg everything I had observed. "There's something deeply wrong going on here. I can feel it." "We'll find out what it is," Greg reassured. "Step by step, we'll uncover the truth." And so, amidst happy family moments and unsettling encounters, the pursuit of truth began. John's scornful comments, Hannah's guarded nature, and the visible strain within their family reinforced my determination. Whatever lies were buried in John's new life, I would dig them up, and he would finally face the consequences. The next week, I finally opened up to Greg about my plan. "Greg, I think we need to investigate John further. I can't shake the feeling that he's hiding something really big." Greg leaned back in his chair, thoughtful. "All right, Vanessa. How do you want to start?" "My accounting skills can be useful here. Maybe I'll dig into his finances, look for any irregularities. Can you see if you've got any contacts who could help figure out what he's been up to?" Greg nodded, determination etched on his face. "We'll get to the bottom of this." Using old connections, Greg reached out to a private investigator he knew, while I began sifting through public records, tax filings, anything linked to John and Hannah. A few days later, with stacks of paperwork spread out on the dining table, I felt my first breakthrough approaching. "Greg, look here," I said, pointing to a document. "There's a company registered under Hannah's name that John seemed to funnel money into regularly. Why would he do that?" Greg looked it over and frowned. That's odd. Maybe it's a front for something. Possibly, I agreed. But what? The weekend gave us the chance to focus even more. I think we should visit some of these addresses linked to the company, Greg suggested. It was late afternoon when we found ourselves outside a dilapidated warehouse. It felt like a scene from a movie. Quiet. Almost too quiet. We walked around the building, looking for anything unusual. As we turned a corner, we spotted John arguing with a rough-looking man. "Did you think I wouldn't find out?" the man growled. "Back off, Larry. This isn't your business," John snapped. "It is when you owe me," Larry shot back, their voices getting louder. Greg pulled out his phone and started recording discreetly. I watched, feeling a mix of fear and curiosity. Before we could gather more, John and Larry left, their argument echoing in the empty space. Back in the car, my heart raced. "Did you get that?" I asked Greg. "Every word," he said, showing me the recording. "Why is he dealing with shady people?" "I don't know, but we're getting closer," I said. Over the next few days, things got more complicated. The investigator Greg contacted found something crucial. John had a vasectomy years ago, meaning he couldn't have fathered Oliver. This revelation hit me like a truck. "Greg, this changes everything," I said, shocked by the news. Greg's face hardened. "We have to confront them. This is bigger than we thought." So, preparations began for an upcoming alumni event where we knew John and Hannah would be present. Greg printed out documents confirming the vasectomy, and I prepared myself for a public showdown. I spent evenings rehearsing what to say, fluctuating between anger and determination. Greg stayed close, his support unwavering. "Remember, you're doing this for the truth," he reminded me. Finally, the night of the event arrived. My heart pounded as we approached the venue, arm in arm. Spotting John and Hannah, we headed straight for them. "Vanessa, Greg, what a surprise," Hannah said, her smile tight. "We need to talk," I declared, voice steady but loud enough to draw attention. John's eyes narrowed. "What now?" Greg pulled out the documents and handed them to John. "Explain this," he demanded. John's face turned white, his bravado crumbling. "You've been spying on me?" "Truth has a way of coming out," I said evenly. "What do you have to say, John?" The room grew silent, everyone's eyes on us. Hannah's face turned crimson as she understood what was happening. The web of lies and deceit was unraveling right before them, and there was no stopping it now. The truth about Oliver's parentage, John's vasectomy, and the financial irregularities, all exposed in public. As John faltered, trying to regain control, Hannah's tears and sputtered excuses sounded like hollow echoes in the room, filled with stunned silence. This confrontation was just a step in uncovering the deeper truth, but it was necessary. As we walked away, leaving the shocked crowd and shattered reputations behind, I felt a weight lift. The past no longer shackled me. Now I was ready to face whatever came next. The air was thick with tension as the whispers started, eyes glued to the scene unfolding in front of them. John stood there, hands shaking, holding the documents we just handed him. His attempt to maintain composure was failing miserably. "What is this?" he stammered, glancing at the papers and then back at me. I crossed my arms, feeling a sense of vindication. "It's proof, John. Proof of your lies. You had a vasectomy years ago. You couldn't have fathered Oliver." Hannah's face turned pale as she tried to pull John away. "This isn't the place for such accusations," she hissed. "Then, when is the right time, Hannah?" I shot back, my voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "Maybe you should explain how Oliver came to be." The crowd around us grew larger, their curiosity tinged with judgment. John swallowed hard, anger replacing his initial shock. "You've gone too far, Vanessa." "Too far?" I laughed bitterly. "You're the one who left me, who lied and cheated. This is just the truth coming out, John." Hannah's eyes filled with tears, but she remained silent. The room seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the next bomb to drop. Greg, standing beside me, placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "We're not backing down, John. The facade ends here." With a burst of arrogance, John attempted to regain control. "This doesn't prove anything. You can't destroy me with baseless accusations." I met his gaze, and for the first time, I saw fear lurking behind his anger. "It's not baseless. We had a private investigator look into it. We have the proof. You're a fraud, John." Hannah broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. "This wasn't supposed to happen like this," she cried, her voice cracking. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." The realization hit John like a ton of bricks. He turned to Hannah, his eyes wide with betrayal. "You knew?" Hannah nodded, unable to meet his eyes. "I thought I could make it work, that you wouldn't find out." John's rage boiled over. "You ruined everything," he shouted. "You and your lies." I took a step forward, looking directly at Hannah. "Why, Hannah? Why lie about a child's parentage?" She looked up, tears streaming down her face. "I wanted a family. I knew John wouldn't stay if he knew the truth." The room gasped, the weight of her confession hanging heavily in the air. Oliver, standing at the edge of the crowd, looked between John and Hannah, confusion and hurt etched on his young face. "Oliver," I called gently, "come here, honey." He hesitated, but then walked towards me, his eyes searching mine for answers. "Is this true?" he whispered, his voice trembling. I knelt down, my heart breaking for him. "It is, and I'm so sorry you had to find out this way." John turned to me, his voice low and dangerous. "You've destroyed my family. Are you happy now?" My answer was steady and resolute. "No, John. You destroyed it with your lies. I just revealed the truth." Greg stepped in, pointing to the pile of evidence. "We'll make sure everyone knows the truth, John. You can't hide behind lies anymore." As John and Hannah stood there, broken and exposed, Greg and I turned to leave. The whispers followed us out, the fallout of the confrontation spreading like wildfire. But for the first time in years, I felt a sense of closure. Back in the car, I took a deep breath. "It's over," I said, a mix of relief and sadness washing over me. Greg squeezed my hand. "It's over, and we did the right thing." Looking back at the venue, I knew the road ahead would still have challenges. But for now, the truth had prevailed. And that was enough. We drove home, ready to face whatever came next, together. We had barely stepped into the house when my phone rang. I glanced at the screen. It was Mary, an old friend from college who had been at the alumni event. "Vanessa, what happened tonight?" "Everyone's talking about it," she said, her voice a mix of shock and curiosity. "It's a long story, Mary. Just know that John's finally been exposed for who he really is," I replied, my voice more exhausted than triumphant. "You did the right thing. I always knew there was something off about him," she said before we wrapped up the call. I sank into the couch, feeling the weight of the evening lift slightly. Greg brought over 2 cups of tea and sat down beside me. "It's not over, you know," Greg said gently. "John's not just going to go quietly." "I know," I replied, "but we'll face it together." The next morning, I found messages waiting for me, some supportive, others prying for more details. The town buzzed with gossip, and I prepped myself for the fallout. Greg took the kids out for breakfast while I tackled emails and phone calls. Just as I was wrapping up, there was a loud knock on the door. I opened it to see John, looking disheveled but still defiant. "We need to talk," he growled. "Fine," I responded, letting him in. "But I'm not going to be bullied in my own home, John." He paced the living room, his agitation palpable. "You couldn't leave it alone, could you? You had to dig up crap to ruin me." "You ruined yourself, John," I said, standing firm. "I just made sure the truth came out." "You've taken everything from me. My career, my reputation, my family," he shouted, his face turning red. "Your lies are what took those things," I replied, my voice calm but strong. "You did this to yourself." His eyes narrowed as he leaned closer. "You think this is over? I'll make sure you regret this." "Leave," I said coldly. "Now." He glared at me but turned to leave, slamming the door behind him. Greg and the kids returned shortly after. I didn't want to alarm them, so I kept the conversation light while Greg read the tension in my face. Later, when the kids were in their rooms, I filled him in on John's visit. "We need to be careful," Greg said, his concern evident. "John's desperate, and desperate people do desperate things." Days passed with John's threatening words lingering in my mind. Then, one evening, I noticed a car tailing me on my way home from work. My heart raced, but I tried to stay calm, taking different routes until I lost them. At home, I shared my concerns with Greg. "Someone was following me today. I'm sure of it." Greg frowned. "We'll need to be more cautious. I'll call the investigator and see if he can help." True to his word, Greg arranged extra security measures while I coordinated with the investigator. Evidence and paternity tests were filed, safeguarding our position. A week later, the investigators' findings revealed more of John's dealings, financial fraud, illicit business ties, and much more. We compiled the evidence, preparing for the storm that was sure to follow. With legal protection in place, Greg and I met with an attorney to discuss the next steps. Given the evidence, we can press charges against John, the attorney explained. But this could get messy, especially with the public exposure. We're prepared for that, I said firmly. He needs to face the consequences. Back at home, I prepared dinner while Greg helped the kids with their homework. It was a brief moment of normalcy, a reminder of what I was fighting to protect. My phone buzzed again. This time it was an email from the attorney, detailing the initial steps for the case. I shared the news with Greg, who looked both concerned and relieved. "We're in for a long fight," he said, wrapping an arm around me, "but we'll make it through. Together." Watching Lily and Ethan at the dining table, I felt a sense of renewed determination. John's downfall wasn't just about revenge. It was about protecting my family and ensuring they knew integrity and truth had a place in our lives. And so, with the calm before the legal storm, we steeled ourselves for the battle ahead, unified and unyielding in our pursuit of justice. The courtroom was silent, except for the hum of tense whispers. John sat across from us, his face a mask of defiance, while Hannah fidgeted beside him, her eyes red from crying. Greg squeezed my hand, a silent reminder that we were in this together. The judge called the session to order, and our attorney rose to present the case. "Your Honor, we have compelling evidence showing financial fraud, manipulative behavior, and the falsification of paternity." As the evidence was laid out, document by document, John's composure faltered. His attorney tried to object, but the judge allowed the presentation to continue. The room held its breath as the details of John's deceit unraveled. Hannah broke down during her testimony. "I didn't know what else to do. John demanded perfection, and I was terrified he'd leave if I told the truth about Oliver." John shot her a look of pure venom. "You're pathetic," he spat. The judge banged his gavel. "Order in the court." After hours of testimonies, the judge adjourned the session, announcing a ruling the next day. The tension was palpable as we left the courtroom. Outside, Greg pulled me into a supportive hug. "We've done everything we can, Van," he whispered. "I know. Now we wait." That night, sleep was a distant friend. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the day's events. Greg's steady breathing beside me was a small comfort. Tomorrow would bring closure, one way or another. Morning came quickly. As we drove to the courthouse, my heart pounded with anticipation. Back in the courtroom, the judge entered, looking stern. After careful deliberation, the court finds the defendant, John Harris, guilty on multiple counts of fraud and deceit. Custodial rights over Oliver are hereby contested, pending further investigation. John's face crumpled, his arrogance replaced by panic. He stood up, pointing at me. "This is your fault, Vanessa. You and your vendetta." I stood my ground. "No, John. This is the consequence of your actions. You did this to yourself." As the court officers escorted John and Hannah out, a sense of immense relief washed over me. We had won. The truth had prevailed. Outside, the sun shone brightly. Greg hugged me tightly, and the kids ran up, their innocent faces asking if everything was finally over. "Yes, it's over," I said, smiling through tears. "We're free." In the days that followed, the legal battles continued over Oliver's custody. John's reputation was shattered, leaving him scrambling to pick up the pieces of his once dominant life. Greg and I focused on our family, making sure Lily and Ethan felt safe and loved. Despite the turmoil, we found moments of peace. One evening, as we sat on the porch, I noticed Oliver approaching our house, looking hesitant. "Vanessa?" he asked, his voice small. "Yes, Oliver. Can I stay here for a bit with you and your family?" Tears welled up in my eyes as I looked at Greg, who nodded. "Of course you can," I said, opening my arms to him. Our family welcomed Oliver with open hearts. Over time, he became part of our lives, finding stability and care among us. The scars left by John's manipulation slowly healed, replaced by the bonds we formed together. Through the chaos, we emerged stronger, bound by truth and love. As we watched the kids play in the yard, Greg held me close, whispering, "We did it." "Yes," I whispered back, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction and hope. "We did." With John's downfall behind us and our family closer than ever, we faced the future, knowing that we had overcome the shadows of the past. Our story was one of resilience, proof that no matter how dark the times, light could always break through. And so we moved forward, hand in hand, ready for whatever came next.